787. Vol 6, Chapter 151, Calm Sorrow. Aurora is the next god of time. Clearly, Isha couldn't process what that statement meant either. What the hell is going on, Leon? Who told you that Aurora is the successor of the power of Kronos? She's still just a child, not even 10 years old. Leon stood up and briefly explained what was mentioned in Safina's letter. Back when we were fighting against Shadow, Aurora from the future exploited a loophole in time, N-A-V-Y-L Cyrillic letter 456, G Cyrillic letter 4BB te, continue reading, travel, allowing her soul to return to the present. That was how she helped us defeat the Shadow. But that act disrupted the stability of the time web, causing Aurora to become the first cause. And since it coincided with Kronos, life and power nearing their end, he chose Aurora to be his successor. A person who has experienced the laws of life and death between the edge of life and death, a person of causality. Isha instantly understood. Does that mean that Aurora even lost the timeline where existed in the future? But if future Aurora brought her back to the present, then it should be the Aurora from that future who becomes the first cause, not. Why would they make the Aurora from our timeline inherit the power of the god of time? Leon tried to explain, repeating what Aurora had already clarified before leaving. Because in the future, at the moment when Aurora helped us defeat the Shadow, that tragic future of hers was altered. Therefore, she no longer exists as Aurora in the timeline. All those experiences and memories now only belong to the future Aurora. But when the god of time begins the cycle of reincarnation, even if the future successor is no longer there, he can still choose the one and only person who can inherit his power in the endless river of time. According to Safina's words and our understanding of the power of Kronos, Aurora basically can't escape this fate. Leon took a deep breath and then slowly exhaled, the weight pressing down heavily on his chest. We need to head back to the Silver Dragon Sanctuary first. The last time I activated the teleportation crystal, I overexerted it. The only relatively close destination is here in Sky City. Sis, take care of things here and then come to us. For a moment, Isha struggled to digest this revelation, but she quickly collected herself and nodded. All right, I understand. With that, Leon took out another teleportation crystal and was about to set the coordinates for the Silver Dragon Sanctuary. Wait a moment, Your Highness, we still need you here to discuss the strategy for dealing with the void. Can you? Odin raised his hand, interrupting the Dragon King's plea to Leon. Leon stood in front of the portal, turning to look at Odin. The Thunder Dragon King's expression was far graver than before, but ever since Leon had appeared before him, he had never seen such an expression on Leon's face. Calm, resigned, yet containing a sorrow and heaviness that words could not express. This man, once the strongest warrior who even Odin had felt inferior to, now appeared utterly powerless in the face of fate. We will do everything we can to resist the void, Your Highness, but we will also be waiting for your assistance, Odin said softly. I will come, Odin's, don't worry, but right now. He tightened his grip on Rosvisar's hand and lowered his gaze. For now, we just want to go home and see our daughter. All the Dragon Kings fell silent, watching as the couple stepped into the portal that led them home. The outer perimeter of the Silver Dragon Sanctuary had also been harassed by the void. But the strange, grotesque creatures had not fully broken through. Most of the void fissures had been concentrated by autos in the extreme north to surround Leon. Thus, other areas had not been seriously invaded. Upon returning to the Silver Dragon Sanctuary, their daughters had already been protected by Vita and Cecilia. The sanctuary remained intact, the guards patrolling the skies in their dragon forms. Your Majesty, Your Highness, you have returned. A silver dragon landed softly and reverted to her human form. Sherry, what's the situation? Rosvisar asked. So far, we've repelled 3 waves of void intrusions. The enemy's attack intensity hasn't been too high, Sherry reported. Rosvisar nodded. Good work. The princesses and the elders are inside the sanctuary. They're safe. All right, stay on high alert. Yes, Your Majesty. With that, Sherry spread her dragon wings and flew back into the sky. Leon and Rosvisar, still holding hands, walked up the steps and entered the sanctuary. Inside the bedroom, the daughters and several children who had lost their parents stood huddled together. The couple stepped inside and saw Cecilia holding Moon, while Vita was holding Muse. Noah was standing on the balcony, staring into the distance. "Daddy, Mommy, you're finally back." Moon jumped down from her grandmother's arms, wagging her little tail as she ran to Leon, throwing herself into his embrace. She lifted her head, her blue eyes full of concern as she said, "Moon missed you so much. You didn't get hurt by those monsters, did you?" Leon knelt down and gently patted Moon's head, forcing a smile, doing his best to keep Moon from noticing his heavy mood. "No, Daddy is so strong. How could I possibly let myself or Mommy get hurt?" That's good, that's good. Moon was so worried about you." Leon chuckled softly. "Well, Daddy's back now, right?" Noah approached them at that moment, but she didn't say anything. She simply stood there silently. Leon looked at his daughter, meeting her gaze. The two of them stared at each other for a moment, then nodded ever so slightly. Leon then stood up and briefly explained the destruction of the five-spirit crown to his father-in-law and mother-in-law. After hearing the news, Cecilia let out a deep sigh. "I can't believe that the Sky King was such a madman, using his most loyal subordinates as bait for a self-detonation. It's unimaginable. This bad news even made the usually calm Vita lose his composure," Cecilia added. "With the cosmic crystal shattered, the void gate won't be sealed for much longer. Soon, all the void creatures will pour into Samuel, and even Otto's himself might personally descend." Cecilia squinted her eyes. "But we still have Zioxu, don't we? If we can find the god of time, then we still have a chance to seal the void again, right? Isn't that right, Leon?" Leon fell silent for a moment. "Senior eye." "That's right, Mom. Leon and I will go look for the god of time as soon as possible," Rosvisser said, clutching Leon's arm tightly, preventing him from continuing. Leon glanced at his wife beside him, realizing she was trying to spare him further emotional burden. "Where's my daughter, Aurora? Where is she?" "Oh, she's in the library with Noah's new teacher," Cecilia said. Leon raised an eyebrow at that. A new teacher. He stared at Cecilia. "Safina is here too." Noah nodded. "Yes, she and Kaiser came. The academy specifically sent them to escort us sisters back home a few days ago." "I see." Leon nodded slightly and said, "I'm going to the library to find them. You all talk among yourselves." "All right." Leon turned and left the room. After closing the door, he quickened his pace, heading straight for the library. "788. Vol 6, Chapter 152, That is your ending." Upon reaching the library, Leon was greeted by several guards stationed outside. They all saluted at his arrival. Leon nodded back briefly before pushing open the door and striding inside. Hearing the sound of the door opening, Aurora, who was sitting with Safina, immediately looked up. "Dad." After the sudden eruption of those monstrous creatures all across the Samuel continent, Aurora had been anxiously awaiting her father's return. The little pink-haired girl leaped down from the chair with a tiger-like pounce, running straight toward Leon. But unlike previous reunions, Leon's reaction when he bent down to catch her was stiff, almost mechanical. Fortunately, Aurora's warm embrace managed to pull him back to reality, even if just a little. "Dad, you're finally back. The academy said the outside is really dangerous right now. Did you and Mom get hurt?" "I heard that Safina-sensei and Kaiser-sensei brought me and Big Sis back a few days ago. None of my other siblings got hurt, right, Dad?" Aurora was about to keep talking, but then she noticed that Leon was looking at her in a strange way. His gaze appeared calm on the surface, yet beneath that calmness, there was a sorrow that was difficult to describe. Aurora stepped back half a step and cautiously asked, "Dad, what's wrong? Did I say Novelight something wrong?" Leon forced himself to tear his gaze away from Aurora's face. He lowered his eyes and squeezed out a smile. "No, Dad's just tired. I zoned out for a moment. Sorry about that." Aurora tilted her head slightly, brushing her hand over her hair in confusion. "It's normal to zone out, so why say sorry, Dad?" Leon pressed his lips together tightly, refusing to say anything more. Instead, he quickly changed the subject. Go back to the bedroom. Mom's back too. Everyone's waiting for you. Oh, okay. With that, Aurora slowly walked away. But before she completely exited the room, she looked back and asked, Dad, aren't you coming with me? I still need to talk with Safina. You go ahead. Dad will be there soon. Aurora nodded, all right. The little pink-haired girl left. Now only Leon, Safina, and Kaiser, who was standing by the bookshelf, skimming through some books, remained in the library. Leon stepped forward and sat down across from Safina. He glanced at the books on the table beside her. Magic Conversion, The Primal Light Body, and a few other ancient texts. Leon drew back his gaze and fixed it on Safina. You mentioned in the letter that those things would happen soon. How soon? Very soon. Safina's tone was as calm as always. She met Leon's gaze, her expression unchanging as she continued. The fact that the void can invade the Samuel continent on such a large scale signifies that the powers of the original gods have already been depleted. Just relying on the powers of the god of wisdom and the god of light is not enough to suppress the void gate. And if I'm not mistaken, something must have gone wrong when you were searching for the five-spirit crown, right? Leon said nothing. He lowered his head, reached into his pocket, and pulled out a handful of dull, golden shards, placing them on the table. Otto's and Carl each self-detonated, destroying the crown. For a brief moment, a flash of shock appeared on Safina's face, but it quickly vanished. That sounds exactly like something that Madman Otto's would do. Leon let out a deep sigh. The crown is gone. Everything we did before was for nothing. Without the crown, the individual spirit cores only possess their respective elemental powers, but they can no longer function as the key to sealing the void gate. And once Chronos completely vanishes, the power of time will disappear as well. When that happens, the void will fully invade the Samuel continent. And when two worlds collide, who knows what kind of catastrophic consequences will follow. As Leon spoke, Safina leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms over her chest. But just like I said in the letter, there is a way to prevent that ending. Leon remained silent, but Safina knew he understood exactly what she was referring to. Chronos' chosen successor, the only key capable of saving the Samuel continent and countless lives. Safina slightly tilted her head, her gaze fixed on Leon's heavy expression. The time you have to make a decision is running out, Leon. The power of time could vanish from the world at any moment, and Otto's could return at any moment as well. Are you going to stand by and watch as the world sinks into the abyss of despair? Or will you sacrifice your own daughter to win this war and save everyone except for Aurora? Otto's was right. This was an impossible choice. No matter what decision Leon made, he would regret it. And in the face of such a hopeless choice, Leon wasn't really struggling over what decision to make. He was struggling to understand why he was the one who had to make such a choice in the first place. Why did fate place him in such an impossible situation? In the past, no matter what kind of predicament he faced, Leon could always rely on his own strength to carve out a path. But this time, the problem in front of him wasn't something that could be solved by brute strength alone. The weight of the entire world pressed down on his shoulders, suffocating him. After more than 10 minutes of silence, Safina finally exhaled a long breath and changed the subject. Kaiser and I will help. Leon blinked, a bit taken aback. Help, but didn't you want to stay out of this conflict? Safina shook her head. At first, that was what we wanted, but then we realized that running away was useless. It would only end up involving the people we care about. Kaiser said that doing nothing would only make things more complicated. If you want to solve a problem, you have to face it head-on. And besides, she deliberately dragged out her words, as if waiting for Leon to respond. And besides, what? Safina smiled faintly, meeting Leon's eyes. And besides, the reason you arranged for us to work at St. Heath Academy, even letting me become Noah's teacher, was so that we could spend time with your daughters and gradually forget about the shadows of the past, right? Leon's thoughts were laid bare, and he couldn't help but chuckle bitterly. You saw right through me. A masterful scheme, Leon. No one can resist your adorable daughters. Safina chuckled softly, but her laughter soon faded. After a long silence, Safina's tone grew more serious. "There's something I want to ask you, Leon." "What is it?" She rubbed her chin, biting her lips slightly. Her lavender eyes lowered, and that conflicted look on her face suggested she was battling an inner struggle. Finally, as if making a difficult decision, Safina spoke. "What kind of ending do you think someone like me deserves?" Leon was momentarily stunned by the question. How had the conversation suddenly shifted to this? But he still took the question seriously, contemplating it before replying. "To return to peace and live out the rest of your life in tranquility." She looked into Leon's eyes, her voice a low, echoing murmur. "To return to peace and live out the rest of my life in tranquility? What a desirable ending." Safina stood up, and Kaiser, holding several books, stepped up beside her. The two of them looked down at Leon. Leon wasn't sure what part of his words had struck a nerve with Safina. After a few seconds of silence, Safina said softly, "No, Leon, that should be your ending, not mine." "789. Vol 6, Chapter 153, The Meaning of Family." After Safina left that last, cryptic remark, she and Kaiser departed together. Watching their retreating figures, Leon's thoughts were in turmoil. He was genuinely relieved that they had managed to step out from the shadows of their past and face life again. It was also a testament to the extraordinary healing power of his precious little girls. They had managed to bring some light back into the lives of Safina and Kaiser. But the void in Otto's domain would not spare Samuel, nor would it spare them. Leon himself was already caught in a dilemma, so he could fully empathize with the sibling pair's current emotional state. Yet the nature of their choices was fundamentally different. Safina and Kaiser had placed the meaning of their existence in the act of choosing. They simply made their choice without being tormented by it. But for Leon, no matter what choice he made, he would inevitably lose something precious. Either he would lose Aurora, or he would lose Samuel and all the creatures living upon it, including his own family. "What the hell am I supposed to do?" Leon muttered to himself. For a moment, he shook his head, trying to dispel those troubling thoughts. It wasn't that he didn't want to think about it, it was that he couldn't bear to face it. Leon stood up, intending to go and discuss the matter with Rossvisser and the others. But just as he was about to leave, his gaze inadvertently fell upon the notes Safina had just been jotting down on the table. Leon picked up the piece of parchment and glanced at it. The contents were fragmented, not forming complete sentences. There were strange arrows, crude sketches, and random symbols scattered across the page. Leon couldn't make sense of it at all. This was something that only Safina herself would understand. Not giving it another thought, he put the notes back where they were and walked out of the library. At midnight, Aurora was awakened by that strange dream again. This time, the palace and the old man in the dream became even clearer. The sand beneath their feet was nearly all drained away, sinking into the depths of the beach. On Aurora's side, the sand remaining on Old Man's side was nearly gone. Upon waking up, Aurora sat up in bed, trying to calm herself down. Then, she threw off the covers, put on her slippers, and quietly left her room. Muse and Moon were still asleep, but there was no sign of Noah. It's so late, where could Big Sis have gone? Since she couldn't sleep anyway, Aurora decided to go out and see if she could find Noah. She carefully opened the door to the sisters' room and poked her little head out, glancing left and right before stepping out. She tiptoed her way toward the staircase. But as she passed by her parents' bedroom, Aurora noticed that light was seeping through the gap beneath the door. Mom and Dad are still awake. Aurora scratched her messy pink hair, walked up to the door, and was about to knock. She thought Noah might be inside with them. But just as Aurora's hand was about to tap against the door, she heard voices coming from inside. "Is that really the case, Zyaoxu? Did you really see a dragon back then? In the sanctuary, you said you felt like you'd seen Aurora somewhere before. So it was in the time web after all. She's the one that Kronos referred to as the temporal anomaly." That's Noah's voice. Yes, judging from Kronos' power, since Aurora is destined to become the next god of time, there is no way to change that outcome. That's Zyaoxu's voice. After that, there was a long, tense silence, that lasted several seconds. Aside from Aurora's appearance, did you see anything else in the time web? Rosvisser asked, her tone gentle but probing. I saw Aurora sitting on the throne of time, Xiaoxu said softly. She was all alone, with no light in her eyes. She sat there for a very, very long time, so long that she transcended the very concept of time. To be eternally imprisoned on that throne, it's not just a metaphor. That loneliness and pain, just hearing it is heartbreaking, let alone actually sitting on that throne oneself. Noah's voice was filled with helplessness and reluctance. Is having Aurora succeed Kronos, restarting the power of time, and using it to seal the void gate, really the only way to save the Samuel? Leon's cold, biting voice cut through the room. Leon, what are we supposed to do? Another long, heavy silence fell. It felt as if everyone was holding their breath, waiting for Leon's response. Finally he spoke, his voice low but firm. I will never give up on Aurora. No one can take my daughter away from me, not even the god of time. Leon had no idea how to stop the void invasion, but he was absolutely clear about one thing, his bottom line. No one is taking Aurora away from me. But Leon, if Aurora doesn't ascend to the throne of time, we won't have enough power to seal off the void. At that point, Autos will lead the entire void realm to invade us. Leon took a deep breath and then slowly exhaled. Then we fight Autos. Even if it costs me my life, I will stop Autos. Leon had never said anything like that before, that he would sacrifice himself to stop an enemy. Because in the past, no matter how powerful his enemies were, he had always been able to rely on his own strength to deal with them. But this time, he was facing the ruler of another world. Even someone as powerful as Kaiser was merely a subordinate under Autos. The sheer terror of facing such a tyrant was unimaginable. Leon didn't have enough confidence to defeat him, but he refused to give up on Aurora. So the only option left was to stake his life on a direct battle against Autos. A heavy sigh echoed in the room. It was the voice of the primeval dragon king, Noah. Leon, throughout history, there have been countless situations like the one we face now. Sacrificing a few to save the many, from a rational standpoint, that is the most correct choice. But if you choose to fight, the casualties will far exceed one person. Leon paused for a moment, then responded in a low voice. So, what those tyrants are saying is that we should just do nothing, and coldly watch as Aurora takes that damned throne. No malice intended, Leon. Dragon King's tone was calm and measured. Someone has to say this cold, hard truth, and since none of you want to, I will. She paused for a moment, then continued. But from a rational standpoint, I don't want to give up on that little pink-haired girl either. I like her quite a lot. She's clever, quick-witted. She should have a bright, limitless future ahead of her, not a life chained to the throne of time. Dragon King's words were much softer this time. After spending so much time with Star and her sisters, the ancient Dragon King had also developed a bond with these little dragon girls. And NAV letter 1D692GHT, exclusive on NAV letter 1D692GHT, as someone who had lived for millennia, having witnessed countless life and death partings, Noah could now calmly and rationally analyze the situation for Leon. No one wants to see Aurora sit on that throne of destruction, Noah said, her voice heavy with the weight of centuries of loss. Rosvisser let out a soft sigh, her voice filled with exhaustion and sorrow. If it really comes down to facing Autos head-on, then my choice will be the same as Leon's. Even if it means sacrificing myself, I will protect my daughter. The couple's stance was so naive, so idealistic. If this were the Noah of old, she would have immediately countered with, what if, even after sacrificing yourselves, you still fail to defeat Autos? But the Noah of today no longer asked such questions, because in such a cold, hopeless situation, the only warmth worth preserving was the bond of family. The light of humanity should not be extinguished by cold logic. This was the true meaning of emotion, a secret that the ancient dragon King Noah had only come to understand after centuries of watching over Noah and her sisters. Another suffocating silence fell over the room. A few minutes later, Leon broke the silence again. Since Xiaoxu can already sense Kronos' presence, does that mean we can open the time palace now? Xioxu was a key created by Kronos himself to open his palace. But over the ages, Xioxu's memories had been sealed, so no one had ever managed to locate the Time Palace, which only existed in myths. Now that Xioxu's memories had been unlocked, and she could sense Kronos again, this was their best chance to enter the palace and uncover the truth. "I can try," Xioxu said, her voice trembling slightly, "but I'll need Rosvisser to channel my power." "All right," Leon nodded. "We don't have much time, let's do it now." "Wait, Dad." Noah stepped forward. "If we do manage to enter the Time Palace and meet Kronos, what do you plan to do? What do you want to say to him?" Leon fell silent, his expression heavy. After a moment, he replied, "I want to see if I can find a way to break this deadlock from Kronos himself. Noah, no matter how small the chance, we can't afford to let it slip by now." "All right, I understand." Having made their decision, they all stood up and headed toward the door. Hearing the sound of footsteps approaching, Aurora, who had been eavesdropping outside the door, quickly darted into a nearby storage room. She wrapped her arms around her knees, her pink eyes trembling uncontrollably. So the nightmare she had resisted for so long wasn't just a dream. When the last grain of sand fell, Aurora knew exactly what would happen. The moment the hourglass was filled, her fate would be sealed. She was on the verge of breaking down. Her small hands were shaking, tears forcing their way through her lashes. Curled up in the corner, her 10 fingers dug into her disheveled hair as she struggled to suppress her fear, breathing heavily. She was scared, terrified. She desperately wished that this terrifying nightmare was just a dream. If it were just a dream, then she could grab her teddy bear, run to her parents' room, jump onto their bed, and bury herself in their arms, letting the warmth and safety of their embrace swallow her fears. But the words of her father, mother, big sister, Aunt Noah, and Xioxu kept echoing in her mind. Is forcing Aurora to sit on the throne of time the only way to save Samuel? "I won't abandon my daughter, even if it costs me my life." Sacrificing a few to save the many, that is the rational choice. "I'm with Leon. Even if I have to throw away my life, I won't give up Aurora." In the cold, silent night in the dark corridor, the storage room door slowly creaked open. Aurora stepped out, her small steps cautious and slow. She quietly followed behind Leon and the others, heading toward the courtyard. Under the moonlight, her cherry-pink eyes sparkled with a renewed, unyielding resolve. "790. Vol 6, Chapter 154, 17 million endings." Leon and the others made their way to the back mountain of the sanctuary, a secluded area where the spatial barrier was less likely to attract attention. In the middle of a clearing, Rosvisser stood with the sacred spear in hand. When in spear form, Xioxu could establish a mental link with Rosvisser. "What do I do next, Xioxu?" Rosvisser asked. The spear was faintly glowing with a gentle, golden radiance. Xioxu's voice echoed through the weapon. "The Time Palace exists independently of the physical world. Only I, a creation of Kronos, can form a bridge between the two locations. Aunt Rosvisser, all you need to do is channel my power. Leave the rest to me." Rosvisser nodded, understood. With that, Rosvisser slowly closed her eyes and began to focus on the power within the spear. A gentle breeze stirred her silver hair and flowing dress. Moments later, a vast, holy energy radiated outward, and golden ripples expanded from Rosvisser's position, spreading across the entire clearing. Leon watched in silence, his heart a mix of emotions. They were about to meet the legendary god of time, the only god who still remained after all these centuries, Kronos. Would this god be able to provide a solution that could save Aurora from becoming his successor? Just as he told Noah, he couldn't afford to miss even the slightest chance. Even if the probability of saving Aurora was 1 in 10,000, or even 1 in a million, Leon would do everything in his power to seize it. Because she was his daughter, his flesh and blood. After a few moments, the golden light grew even more intense. Leon and Noah could feel that divine aura seeping through the air. Then a golden gate materialized, opening the way to the palace. When the light subsided, a magnificent golden palace appeared before them. It stood out starkly against the desolate wilderness, a structure so majestic that it seemed completely out of place in such a barren setting. But that was its mystical nature. As Zioxu said, the Time Palace was independent of reality, so any location could serve as its entrance, as long as one possessed the key. So this is Chronos' palace. It's incredible, Noah murmured, awe evident in her voice. Leon took a deep breath, steadied himself, and stepped forward, Noah following close behind. You all right, feeling any discomfort? He asked, glancing at Rosvisser. Rosvisser shook her head. I'm fine. Unlocking the palace only draws on Zioxu's power. It doesn't affect me. Good, let's go inside. Emma. The group advanced toward the palace gates, with Noah trailing behind. But just before she entered, she heard a faint rustling sound from the bushes behind her. Noah turned around, scanning the area, but there was nothing unusual in sight. Did I imagine it? Noah, what's wrong? Rosvisser called from ahead. Oh, nothing, Mom, coming. Noah quickly jogged to catch up with the others. Meanwhile, hiding behind the bushes, Aurora finally released the breath she had been holding. That was close, almost got caught. She crouched in the shadows, her pink eyes fixed on the grand, imposing palace, its golden light reflecting in her gaze. So this is where a god lives. The awe was fleeting. The next second, the chilling realization struck her, the dream that had tormented her all this time. It would come true here. The light in Aurora's eyes slowly dimmed. She tiptoed out of the bushes and quietly followed after her family, drawing closer to the entrance of the palace. Inside the Time Palace, there were no guards and no luxurious decorations. The entire hall was empty and eerily silent. Only a massive hourglass lay horizontally across the entrance and the central bridge, serving as the only bridge between the two areas. Leon and the others immediately noticed that the sand in the hourglass beside the throne was almost completely drained. Zioxu materialized back into her human form and stood next to Rosvisser, staring at the familiar yet foreign palace. This is where Chronos created me, she murmured. Aurora's memory flashed back to that fragmented vision. Back then, she had been with Chronos, peering into the sacred time web. Rosvisser nodded slightly, then scanned the surroundings. So where is Chronos? Before she could finish, a deep, ancient voice echoed from the throne. You have recalled your mission, yet you have not grasped the true power of time. Everyone turned toward the source of the voice. On the once empty throne now sat a white-haired old man. His hand propped up his weary head, and his breathing was weak and labored, as if he were hanging onto life by a thread. Leon's eyes narrowed. Chronos. The era of gods is coming to an end, Chronos sighed. I am a dying god, but, given your unique circumstances, I will overlook your insolence, Leon Kazmod. Unique circumstances. Leon took a step forward, his tone sharp. He didn't bother to show respect to the god. After all, Chronos was the god trying to drag his beloved daughter to the throne of eternal suffering. What do you mean by unique? Leon asked, his tone biting. The father of Aurora, Chronos said, his gaze piercing. You and your wife nurtured her into what she is now. Without you two, she would never have touched divine power in her lifetime. And you think anyone wants that so-called divine power? It was Rosvisser who spoke this time, her voice cold and unyielding. Like her husband, she had no intention of being polite to Chronos. The queen of silver dragons, you two don't have to treat me with such hostility, Chronos said, his tone growing weaker. For hundreds of thousands of years, Aurora is the only mortal who has ever tampered with time. She possesses unparalleled talent and a fate beyond compare. She is a brilliant light in the time web, the only one who can inherit time Novellight after I'm gone. I created Aurora for the sole purpose of bringing her here to fulfill her mission. This outcome has already been seen in millions of timelines, so even if you try to stop me now or prevent this from happening, it's already too late. Leon's jaw clenched as he glared at Chronos, his eyes cold enough to freeze even a god's soul. If there's no way to save that damn time web, then can't someone else inherit the power of time? Chronos chuckled weakly, and who would that be, Kazmod? Leon was silent. Chronos shook his head. In all of Samuel, there is only Aurora. She is the only mortal who has ever truly touched the power of time. There is no other candidate. Rosvisser grabbed Leon's wrist, holding him back. If she didn't, he might just charge forward and throttle the god. Your time web can see the outcome of any event, right? Rosvisser asked. Yes, but only the outcome, not the process, Kronos said. It is forbidden to observe the course of events in the time web. Rosvisser's eyes narrowed. Then, in the time web, is there any outcome where we defeat the void realm without relying on divine power? Kronos' answer was swift and cruel. No, in every timeline where you win, Aurora takes the throne of time. So give up, mortals. Only Aurora ascending to the throne of time can save everything. It was like a death sentence. Leon and Rosvisser's shoulders sagged, their minds going blank. Noah, if not for her ancient ancestors supporting her, would have likely collapsed under the weight of such a revelation. If what Kronos said was true, then for Aurora to ascend to the throne meant. Not the only one, Zioxu's voice echoed through the silence. All eyes turned to her. Kronos raised an eyebrow. What? When I was with Aurora looking into the time web, there was one ending where she didn't take the throne. What kind? Rosvisser asked, her tone urgent. She doesn't remember, Kronos interrupted, slowly rising from the throne, because that was an incomplete time web. Leon's eyes darkened. What do you mean by incomplete? Kronos sighed. In that web, the events were fragmented. The outcomes were incomplete. But even if you found that web, it is still just a broken remnant. There is no hope to be found there. Why? Kronos waved his hand. Golden threads formed a vast web in the air, each string showing fragmented scenes. And in every single scene, without exception, Aurora was sitting alone on the throne of time. How many endings are there? Noah whispered, her voice trembling. Kronos' answer was a crushing number. 17 million. In all 17 million outcomes, there is only one where Aurora doesn't take the throne. And that one is an incomplete time web. So don't waste your hope on it. (791). Vol 6, Chapter 155, This is My Choice. When Leon entered the palace, he was still thinking that even if there was only a 1 in a million chance to keep Aurora, he was willing to fight with everything he had to seize it. But when Kronos uttered the absurd number, 17 million, Leon felt as if a bucket of icy water had been poured over his head. It was clearly just a weightless number, something that couldn't possibly compare to any mountain Leon had ever passed, yet it bore down on him with crushing force. He couldn't breathe, he couldn't straighten his back. Noah slowly stepped forward, the pure white aura flowing around her. She gazed at the blood-soaked Kronos and asked softly, I know that as the exalted god of time, you only need to act as you always have, even if my thoughts align with yours. But now, you have to force yourself to understand me and stand in my shoes. The former me also shared your perspective. But ever since I met this person and her family, my view on emotions and things like that has slowly started to change. I believe that even if the ending can't be changed with your power, is it possible to make some minor alterations to the outcome for the sake of the Melkve family's bonds? For example, even if Aurora is destined to ascend the throne, can you at least allow her to meet her family periodically? Or, perhaps, use some special method to establish contact? Kronos' pure eyes slowly turned to Noah. From this girl, he could sense a presence that was not entirely human. Kronos narrowed his eyes slightly, and then, as if realizing something, he murmured, Ah, so it's you. No wonder you're speaking to me in such a tone. As the light side of Tiamat, you're considered a half-divine being yourself. You should already know, for us gods, there's no such thing as for the sake of something or someone. The ancestor secretly gritted her teeth. She was facing a truly unyielding opponent. He wasn't going to budge, not even a fraction. All the paths were blocked. Here with Kronos, there was clearly no way to prevent Aurora from becoming the next time successor. Cough coughs. A sudden fit of coughing shattered the silence. Everyone turned toward the sound. Navia's god was leaning heavily against the armrest of the throne, one hand clutching his chest as he coughed violently. He was too weak, But as a god who coexisted with the world, this was the natural end of his lifespan. Of course, Kronos' fall signified the impending disappearance of the last force, suppressing the Void Gate. The time left for Leon and the others was rapidly dwindling. It could practically be counted in seconds. Leon clutched Rosvisser's arm. "Let's go," he said. Rosvisser nodded softly. She took Noah and Zioxu and turned to walk toward the exit of the sanctuary. Kronos stood beside the throne, quietly watching their retreating figures. He ruminated over what the primordial dragon king had just said, then closed his eyes and let out a long sigh. To gain the indulgence of a god, words alone aren't enough, Noah. But just as the two golden doors were about to fully shut, a small pink figure slipped through the gap, using her petite size to her advantage. Boom! The doors closed. Kronos stared at the little intruder, momentarily stunned. In this sanctuary of time, although it wasn't completely airtight, it was still somewhat embarrassing to be outmaneuvered by a little girl like this. But Kronos couldn't help but shake his head and chuckle. After all, this pink-haired little girl had embarrassed him more than once before. "Aurora Melkve, you finally came." Kronos looked at the girl, his gaze a complicated mix of emotions. Relief, anticipation, and even a hint of loss. "I don't really understand the ins and outs of the whole thing, but from what Dad and the others said, if I take your place and inherit your power, I'll be able to drive away all those monsters from the other world and protect my family, right?" Aurora got straight to the point, her tone unusually serious. Kronos lowered his head. "That's right, have you made your choice? We don't have much time left." "I've already made up my mind." Aurora barely hesitated. She lowered her eyes, staring at her open palms. "All this time, it's always been Big Sister protecting us. Because she has the strength, she's always taken it upon herself to bear that responsibility. But this time, it's my turn to do something for my family." Half an hour ago, while hiding in the storage room, Aurora had nearly been consumed by fear and helplessness. During those few short minutes, she had thought about many, many things. Her past, her present, and her future. Every one of them was so beautiful. Because she had been born into such a wonderful, happy family. From the very beginning, she had grown up surrounded by her father, mother, sisters. There was no one in the world who could take their place. If someone asked Aurora if she could bear to let all this go, she would answer without hesitation, absolutely not. Of course, she couldn't bear it. She couldn't bear to lose her father's doting love, her mother's gentle care, or her big sister's protective embrace. Her sister's Mew's heartfelt words that once cut to the bone. Those were the building blocks of her entire life. How could she possibly give them up? But that was also the reason Aurora made her decision. If she didn't come here, then all those beautiful things and that happiness would be destroyed. If I inherit the God of Time's legacy, then I can keep watching them. Even if I can no longer be part of it, even if I can only gaze from afar, separated by the river of time. Kronos slowly stepped down from the throne and walked over to the dwindling hourglass. "Before you become a god, is there anything else you regret as Aurora?" Aurora pondered for a moment and then softly answered, "I don't really have any regrets. If I have to say something, it would be that I couldn't help Dad and Big Sister carry some of their burdens earlier." She lifted her gaze to Kronos, her expression resolute. "This is my choice, not theirs. A mere trickster of time is not truly qualified to bear the title of God of Time. In the future, I imagine, I will absolutely be worthy of that title." Kronos smiled with relief. "All right, then let us begin. What do I need to do?" "Stand at the other end of the hourglass. When all the sand has flowed to your side, it means you will have officially become the next God of Time." Aurora looked down at the hourglass beneath the steps. To the left, it connected to the other side of the time throne. It was just like the degrees NOV, EL, IGHT degrees dream she'd had. Aurora took a deep breath, clenched her fists, and whispered to herself, "All right, I understand." She closed her eyes and took a step forward. But before she could move, a hand pressed down on her shoulder from behind. Aurora stiffened and slowly opened her eyes. She turned around to see who it was, and her eyes widened slightly. Safina-sensei. (792). Vol 6, Chapter 156, The Unpredictable Limit. The moment the doors of the Time Palace closed, Leon was just about to say something to comfort Rosvisser. But before he could speak, a powerful yet eerie pressure surged from the borders of the Silver Dragon territory. Rosvisser and the others felt it too. The girl furrowed her brows, instantly guessing what kind of upheaval might have occurred at the border. The Void Realm is launching a large-scale attack against us. Up until now, among all the primordial gods, only the god of time was the most troublesome for the Void Realm. Ottos couldn't be certain what Kronos might have revealed to the Void in his final moments, or whether, at the last second, that pink-haired little girl had successfully inherited the power of time. Thus, just a dozen hours after Ottos declared war on Samuel, he chose to launch a full-scale assault on the Silver Dragons. That unsettling sense of oppression felt identical to what Leon and Rosvisser experienced when they were surrounded by the Void Horde in the far north. Not long after, dozens of dragons flew through the sky. It seems that Sherry and the others have already detected the Void's raid and are preparing for a counterattack, Rosvisser said as she looked at Leon. Let's go check on our daughters first, then head to the front lines to intercept the Void. Leon nodded. All right. With that, Rosvisser transformed into her dragon form, carrying Leon, Noah, and Zioxu as they flew toward the sanctuary. The commotion outside had already awakened Moon and Muse from their sleep. Fortunately, Cecilia arrived just in time to soothe the two frightened little ones. When Leon and the others returned to the room, they saw Cecilia holding Moon and Muse, who were snuggled up against their grandparents. Leon's heart finally eased a little. But as he scanned the room, he couldn't see Aurora anywhere. Where is Aurora? Moon shook her head. When we woke up, Aurora wasn't here. Dad, could something have happened to her? Leon forced a smile, crouching down to Moon's level. He reached out and ruffled her hair gently. No, don't worry. Dad will definitely bring Aurora back. You stay here with Grandpa, Grandma, and Muse, okay? But Moon was no longer the little girl who could be coaxed with just a few words. She could see and feel that Dad, Mom, and Big Sister were all mentally and physically exhausted. That faint, bitter smile Dad just showed was clearly just to comfort her. But despite her unease, Moon still nodded obediently. Okay, Moon will wait for you to come back. Then her gaze moved past Leon's shoulder, looking toward Rosvisser, Noah, and Zioxu. Mom, Big Sister, Zioxu, you all have to come back before dawn, okay? Of course, Moon, and not only that, we'll also bring Aurora back with me. Moon bit her lip, as if wanting to say more. But in the end, she just nodded, leaning back into her grandfather's embrace, revealing only one eye as she watched her family preparing to head to the front lines. Rosvisser then crouched down and cupped Muse's small face in her hands. When Dad and Big Sister aren't around, you have to listen to Grandpa and Grandma, all right. Muse's red eyes shimmered with worry. She sat on Grandpa Vita's lap, leaning forward, her tiny arms reaching out to wrap around Rosvisser's neck. Muse will be good, Mom. The eerie feeling brought by the Void's descent was so palpable that even a child like Muse could sense it clearly. Rosvisser stroked her youngest daughter's hair, gently patting her head. Muse is the best. After comforting their daughters, Rosvisser turned to Vita and Cecilia. Dad, Mom, please look after Moon and Muse for now. Leon and I will be back as soon as possible. Having spent centuries searching for divine artifacts outside, Cecilia and Vita had fought the Void before. They knew the strength of the Void, especially in battles against creatures from other worlds, which was far more terrifying than Rosvisser's lighthearted tone suggested. But with their granddaughters right here, they couldn't bring themselves to say anything too heavy. So they kept it simple. Be careful, Cecilia said. Rosvisser nodded. We will, Mom. After entrusting their daughters to the older generation, the couple and their companions left the room, striding quickly through the corridor. So, where exactly did Aurora go? Noah's tone was as urgent as her steps. Leon's brow furrowed. he had a rather ominous guess. That girl is smart. She might have already figured out the matter with the god of time. As he spoke, Leon glanced at his wife. Rosvisser, you and Zioxu find a safe place to stay. Noah and I will reopen the Time Palace and check if Aurora is there. Noah and I will hold the front line. Rosvisser couldn't argue when it concerned Aurora. All right, I understand. With that, the family split into two groups. Once outside the sanctuary, Leon blew a sharp whistle. Soon, the six-winged dragon hawk descended slowly into the courtyard. Leon patted the hawk's wings. So, you still remember me, huh? The hawk shook its feathers in response. Father and daughter mounted the dragon hawk and flew toward the border of the Silver Dragon territory. As they neared the battlefield, the sight before them became clearer. Flames soared into the sky. Magic clashed relentlessly. Hundreds of void rifts tore open the air, spewing out monstrous creatures in a relentless wave. The intensity was overwhelming, even worse than what they had encountered in the far north. Otto's is determined to crush the power of time, Leon muttered. Noah stared ahead at the surging void horde. If Kronos has fallen, or if Aurora hasn't taken the throne, the void's offensive will be far more ferocious than this. She paused, then added, it's possible that even we won't be able to face Otto's directly. Dad, can we win? The question made Leon fall silent for several seconds. In truth, the moment he decided to let Aurora go, he had already resolved to face Otto's head-on. Who could predict the outcome of this battle? The Void Realm had always been shrouded in mystery and strangeness, and its ruler even more so. Leon knew how powerful Otto's was, strong enough that it took multiple Dragon Kings and future Noah's assistants to defeat him. Otto's underlings, Talos and Karl, Safina with her near-unbeatable mirror abyss eyes, Kaiser, capable of taking on several top-tier Dragon Kings alone without faltering. Looking across the heavens and earth, Leon was the only one who could do it. Leon could roughly gauge Otto's lower limits, but the upper limits of this tyrant's power were unimaginable. Could he really save his family once again from such a formidable enemy? The sounds of the battlefield grew clearer, pulling Leon back to reality. He fixed his gaze forward, then shook his head. I don't know, Noah, but I do know this. If we don't defeat Otto's, Aurora will be forever trapped on the throne of time. So, as I said, even if it costs me my life, I have to beat Otto's. The flames from the battlefield reflected in Noah's eyes, and a gentle breeze lifted her dark bangs. For a brief moment, a hint of nostalgia flashed in her blue eyes, but it quickly vanished, replaced by firm resolve. She raised her right fist and extended it toward Leon. We can do this, Dad, just like every other time. Leon stared at Noah's fist, memories flooding his mind. Back then, she was so small. Her little fist had been tiny yet determined. But now she had grown. That fist was strong, solid, capable. Leon smiled softly, raised his own fist, and gently tilde N av L letter 1D55AGHT tilde bumped it against Noah's. Yes, we can. We definitely can. Then, father and daughter leaped off the six-winged dragon hawk's back, diving straight into the void horde below. (793). Vol 6, Chapter 157, What a Beautiful World. The Void's invasion was overwhelming. Just in terms of sheer numbers, they outnumbered the Silver Dragons by 3 or 4 times. Even Milana, a mere maid, had to rush to the front lines at the very first moment. But Milana's combat prowess was nowhere near that of elite guards like Sherry. And with the enemy deploying such a terrifyingly overwhelming number of troops, Milana was quickly surrounded by dozens of void swarm bugs. The insects emitted a chilling, droning hum. Their sharp teeth were bared, rows of them glistening like spikes. They seized their chance and lunged at the already exhausted Milana. Damn it! Milana closed her eyes, bracing herself for death. But in the next instant, 2 bolts of lightning descended from the sky, obliterating the void swarm bugs in front of her. Milana slowly opened her eyes. Your Highness, Lady Noah. Noah didn't linger. She activated her primordial mode and charged straight into the enemy ranks. Leon crouched down beside Milana, looking her in the eyes. You did well, Milana. Your mana is depleted, go to the rear and rest. And besides, you can't afford to get hurt. Milana knew exactly what Leon meant by, you can't afford to get hurt. Among the maids, she was the only one who was married, Novelight, and had a child. So she didn't refuse. Milana stepped back a few paces and bowed her head. Thank you, Your Highness. With that, she retreated from the battlefield under the protection of a fellow maid. Leon withdrew his gaze and looked forward. Noah was already rampaging through the enemy ranks. Against these otherworldly creatures, the overachiever princess showed no mercy. And Noah knew very well that if the void wasn't pushed back, her sister would become the next god of time, forever trapped on that throne, never able to leave. She would never allow that to happen. Her father said he would stake his life to stop the enemy, and Noah would do no less. Watching his daughters back, Leon's eyes were filled with pride. The eldest princess, who once snuck out on covert missions, had now become a formidable protector of her family. Leon smiled, then charged forward to join Noah and the Silver Dragon warriors in battle. The sounds of combat echoed endlessly. Without a doubt, this battle against the Silver Dragons marked the official commencement of the Void's invasion. Back in the far north, that had only been a setup to trap Leon and Rosvisser. But here, this battlefield was the real, desperate struggle for survival. More and more void rifts opened in the sky, and more monstrous creatures poured out from them. Soon, the Silver Dragon warriors realized that no matter how many enemies they killed, the void creatures just kept coming. Has Princess Isha's reinforcements not arrived yet? Before the cry could fully escape the warrior's mouth, Sherry, surrounded by the swarm bugs, turned to look at her squad members. The Red Dragon Sanctuary is also under attack by the Void. While the scale isn't as large as ours, it's still enough to keep them tied down for a while. Sherry gritted her teeth, the blood trailing down her jaw and dripping to the ground. With no other choice, she turned around and continued to fight desperately. Meanwhile, at another section of the battlefield, Leon and Noah had just finished off another wave of enemies. They stood back to back, breathing heavily. These monsters just keep coming, Dad, Noah said. Yeah, Kronos's power is fading, and the void gates are about to completely break through. Leon gripped the thundercloud blade, his gaze fixed on the endless wave of void creatures. Despite the impending danger, Leon's mind was still occupied with thoughts of his wife and daughters. We still haven't found Aurora. Please, let nothing happen to them. They're coming again, Dad, Noah warned. Leon snapped back to the present, nodding firmly. All right, keep going. From a distance, the entire border of the Silver Dragon territory was shrouded in a blackish-purple aura. The battlefield was a sea of flames and clashing magic. Countless void monsters surged forward, driving the Silver Dragons back toward the forest at the border. If they crossed the forest, they would reach the sanctuary. We can't let these monsters break through the forest line. Anna shouted, her voice echoing across the battlefield. The warriors and maids responded in unison. Understood. We will defend the Silver Dragon territory to the death. If the void broke through the forest, they would reach the sanctuary, where the princesses and their people were. That was the heart of the Silver Dragons. Anna, Sherry, and the warriors spread their dragon wings, transforming into massive silver dragons to form a defensive wall. But Leon, who had already faced these creatures in the far north, rushed forward and shouted, No, don't transform, Anna. Leon bellowed, These bugs devoured a dragon king in the far north. Stay in your human forms as much as possible. The more dragonized they were, the more they would attract the swarm bugs. Lux and Lokia had fallen because of that in the far north. Anna bit her lip, forcing herself to revert to human form. But a few silver dragon maids weren't quick enough and were swarmed by the bugs. Anna watched in horror and fury as her comrades, the maids she had trained and fought alongside, were torn apart. She could still hear their dying screams echoing in her ears. Anna clenched her fists, the fire of rage blazing in her eyes. You monsters, I'll kill you all. Dragonfire erupted, scorching the swarm and burning the creatures to ash. The sacrifice of their comrades reignited the fighting spirit of every Silver Dragon warrior. They charged forward, clashing with the void monsters in a desperate battle. But the situation remained dire. Blood had already stained the white snow red. Void rifts continued to open, and despite Leon and Noah's best efforts, the monsters kept multiplying. "There's no end to them, Dad," Noah said. Leon stared at the void rifts in the sky, the dark purple hue dyeing the heavens ominously. He narrowed his eyes. "I have an idea. I want to try something." Noah blinked. "What is it?" "These void rifts aren't stable. If we hit them with a powerful enough force, they'll be disrupted and temporarily closed." Leon explained, "I noticed it during my last fight with a void warrior. If we use dragon annihilation, we might be able to suppress them." Noah's eyes glinted. "Got it, I'll help." The two immediately put their plan into action. Leon raised his right hand, and the already dark sky grew even darker as storm clouds gathered. Lightning crackled through the clouds, thunder roaring. Noah activated her primordial power. They locked eyes, nodded, and unleashed their techniques. Ultra S-rank lightning magic, dragon annihilation. Primordial magic, holy radiance absorption. Thunder roared as a massive dragon of lightning crashed down from the clouds, encased in a blinding holy light. The combined impact spread across the battlefield, suppressing the void rifts and severing the supply of reinforcements. Noah's eyes shone. "Dad, we did it." But Leon's heart remained heavy. Despite the temporary victory, he could feel it, a deeper, darker power approaching. Just then, a chilling purple light split the ground open in a cross shape. Leon tensed, placing Noah behind him as he fixed his eyes on the rift. A shadow emerged from the rift, spinning through the air before stabbing into the ground with a deafening crash. The impact blasted away both void creatures and Silver Dragon warriors alike. When the smoke cleared, they saw it. A massive black and red sword, its blade thick and sharp, its surface emanating a sinister, ancient aura. The hilt bore a crimson eye, a living, twitching organ that scanned the battlefield. Then, from the rift, a figure emerged. He walked up to the sword, grasped the hilt, and slung it over his shoulder. The man looked around at the battlefield, a smile playing on his lips. "What a beautiful world," he said softly, "and soon, it will all be mine." (794) Vol 6, Chapter 158, The Daughter's Choice. Otto's. I didn't think he'd step into the battle this quickly. Leon tightened his grip on the thundercloud blade as a crushing pressure surged from Otto's direction. Even for Leon, facing the ruler of another world, it was impossible to remain completely calm. This battle doesn't just determine Samuel's future, it decides Aurora's fate. If we lose, the consequences will be beyond me. I must win, I must. Otto's gaze met Leon's with equal intensity. In those crimson pupils was the disdainful arrogance of a supreme being. He already knew that the man before him was the one who had slain Shadow, Leon Kazmod. Samuel, a realm where even saints of the primary rank could save the world, but only because a disaster so great had threatened it that the world needed to be saved. And now that disaster was Otto's, one far beyond any opponent Leon had ever faced. Otto's was curious. Would Samuel's so-called savior be able to turn the tide this time? But soon, Otto's attention shifted away from Leon and swept across the battlefield. Though the Void's numbers were relatively few, the momentum was entirely on their side. Otto's instantly noticed the Silver Dragon's clear disadvantage. He scoffed, slowly turning his gaze back to Leon. "Looks like even with your personal appearance, and even if I hadn't descended into Samuel myself, my pets would have devoured all you pathetic creatures eventually. It's only a matter of time." Leon didn't take the bait. He could see Otto's words for what they were, psychological pressure. After all, he and Noah had just temporarily sealed off most of the void rifts. Even if it was short-lived, it was enough to buy the Silver Dragon's time to stabilize the situation. And Otto's had only appeared after they closed N-AV-YL Cyrillic letter 456, get HT. Don't copy, read here, the rifts. That alone proved Otto's wasn't as confident as he claimed. He'd come because he was impatient, uncertain of the outcome. He was worried. He wasn't as relaxed as he pretended to be. Leon didn't respond. He silently gathered mana, gripped the thundercloud blade, raised his arm, and whispered, "Noah, go support Anna and Sherry. I'll take care of Otto's." He could have taken Noah with him into battle. He could have let her fight alongside him against the false gods. But when it came to Otto's, Leon didn't believe her presence would help. Yes, Noah now had full command of the primordial force. She was a formidable warrior. But to Leon, her identity as a daughter meant more than any amount of firepower. No one knew the true depths of Otto's power. He was unlike Shadow, whose limits could still be estimated. Otto's commanded the entire void and the countless monstrosities within it. Leon had no confidence that he could defeat such a being. That's why he wanted Noah to leave. But of course, Noah understood her father's intentions. She didn't move. Instead, she shifted her gaze from Leon to the distant figure of Otto's and said quietly, "Dad, the situation is critical. I don't want to argue. But just know this, if something happens to me, it's my choice. You don't have to take responsibility, and you absolutely don't have to feel guilty." Leon's pupils trembled as he looked at her small frame. Noah. What he didn't know was that, on this war-torn night, both Noah and Aurora, in separate places and different circumstances, had said nearly identical words. "This is my choice." They had grown up, shaped by the love and guidance of Leon and Rosvisser. They had developed their own will and resolve. He and his wife could no longer treat them as helpless little girls. Leon wasn't sure whether to feel proud or overwhelmed. But since Noah had spoken so clearly, he couldn't force her to leave anymore. "Still," he said, "don't get hurt, Noah, because if you do, your mom will kill me when we get back." Noah shook her head and laughed. Only her dad could crack a joke like that at a time like this, finding humor even at the edge of disaster. "All right, got it, Dad." Otto's watched the father and daughter. Were they laughing? Even with a massive enemy force before them, they were smiling. Otto's brows twitched. "Lowly beings," he muttered. "They can't even manage the most basic emotional restraint. You don't deserve to live in such a beautiful world. Therefore." His predator's eyes swept across the battlefield. "Before I take control of this world, I'll clean out the trash." He raised his massive crimson greatsword and drove it into the earth before him. A wave of eerie violet energy flowed from his hand and seeped into the hilt of the sword. That energy slowly entered the crimson eye, embedded in the hilt. Soon, the eye began to twitch violently. Bloodshot veins spiderwebbed across its sclera. Noah's heart tensed. He's about to strike. "Get ready, Noah." "Understood." In the next instant, countless violet beams shot out from the eye on Otto's sword. The beams were dense, precise, and devastatingly powerful. In a flash, everything within 100 meters around Otto's was vaporized, even his own void troops. Void technique, Demon Blade, Blight of the Forsaken Light. The beams swept across the battlefield like a net. Blood and flesh burst into the air wherever they passed. The Silver Dragon soldiers, who reacted fast enough, dodged, in whatever ways they could. Leon activated his Sumeru shadow just in time, shielding both himself and Noah. Void monsters were cut in half. Their shrieks were layered with the sounds of boiling blood and splintering bone. It sent a chill through every spine. Leon poured everything into reinforcing the blue bones of his Sumeru shadow. Even so, when the beams struck its frame, deep gashes tore across it. Had the beams targeted a single point instead of sweeping in lines, the Sumeru shadow would have shattered within seconds. Leon had never encountered anything like this. An attack so widespread, so lethal, it could penetrate Sumeru shadow itself. The beam barrage lasted 2 full minutes. And when it finally ended, the once chaotic battlefield had been cleared into a vast, empty space. That is, if you ignored the corpses of the void beasts and silver dragon warriors strewn across the field. Noah stood in shock, eyes wide. She stared at the devastation. This kind of indiscriminate attack, even killing his own troops. Safin and Kaiser were right. This guy really is insane. Looking at the fallen warriors, the rage in her heart surged. He's clearing the battlefield, making room, but why? Those void creatures still had plenty of combat value. Why kill them? Leon narrowed his eyes, recalling what the Safina siblings had once told him during the Lantern Festival, about the Void's two factions, the Dissensionists and the Homeland Loyalists. Could it be? He didn't have to wait long for the answer. Otto's raised his massive sword again. Behind him, a colossal void rift opened, a gaping wound in the air, like a titanic eye. From its depths poured armored void warriors. Unlike the previous beast-like monsters, these were equipped, disciplined. Noah stared at the new arrivals behind Otto's. Judging by their formation and step, they're far more organized than those previous creatures. This is Otto's real army. Leon nodded. Formed by the Dissensionists and the Homeland Loyalists, Otto's never cared about the frontline void creatures. He cleared the battlefield to make space for these. The Dissensionists wanted to invade Samel for a better world. The Homeland Loyalists wanted to restore vitality to the void. But under Otto's threat of force and massacre, both sides had followed him, abandoning their principles to trample another world. Whether it was the earlier monster horde or this new organized army, their numbers far exceeded the remaining Silver Dragon soldiers. With sword in hand, Otto's dragged its blade across the scorched earth, carving burning trenches as he strode toward Leon. Well then, are you ready to be consumed by the void, Leon? Kazmod. (795). Vol 6, Chapter 159, The Meaning of Death. With a single command, tens of thousands of void warriors surged toward the Silver Dragon side like a collapsing mountain. Their objective was unmistakably clear: to break through the defense line, locate the successor of the God of Time, and smother the last flicker of resistance to the void before it could awaken. A brutal clash erupted instantly. Though they stood ready, the numbers were still overwhelmingly against them. Otto's showed no urgency to join the front himself. Instead, he remained at the rear, overseeing the battle. Leon directed the Silver Dragon warriors in a firm counteroffensive. The two armies collided with a deafening din of slaughter and steel. Otto's was considerate enough to Leon and his daughter, dispatching several hundred elite fighters specifically to handle them. Leon tried to disrupt the enemy's assault with wide-range magic. But the sheer number of enemies was outrageous, and their coordination and combat strength far exceeded the void beasts they'd fought before. So after the first round, aside from halting the vanguard, Leon's spells didn't inflict any major damage on the void warriors. When the magical exchanges ended, Leon immediately engaged several void warriors in close combat. At this range, Leon's extrasensory perception gave him a distinct advantage. Two void warriors charged him head-on. Leon lowered into a slight crouch, waited for the right moment, then sidestepped with ease to evade one of their lunges. He seized the other by the torso and with explosive force drove his knee straight into the man's gut. The brutal impact dropped the attacker on the spot. Without pause, Leon grabbed the man's collar and flung him into the reinforcements, rushing from behind. The two crashed together and tumbled violently. But before Leon could catch his breath, three more figures leapt at him from behind. Blades drawn, they slashed toward the back of Leon's neck in unison. He reacted again. This time we've got him. One of them grinned to himself, the so-called strongest man of Samel, leaving such a wide opening in the middle of a fight. But in the very next second, without even turning around, Leon evaded the sneak attack with a ghost-like twist of his body. What? How is that even ga? Before the man could even finish his sentence, Leon stepped back, brought up his knee, and drove his elbow into the man's chest with bone-crushing force. Seizing the moment, he snatched the blade from the man's hand. Leon spun, grasped the attacker's wrist, and slashed the blade across his chest. Blood sprayed out. The warrior stumbled back, clutching his wound. Damn it, this bastard's reactions are insane. He can move like that. He looked straight through my attack like it was nothing. He hadn't seen it coming, yet somehow Leon had dodged with perfect precision. Leon turned from the wounded man and immediately faced the other two. Clang! Their blades clashed, sparks flying. Leon refused to be drawn into a raw power struggle. Instead, he lifted his other hand and summoned the thunder blade. The arc of lightning forced one of them backward. Taking advantage of the brief opening, before the enemy or his spear could regain balance, Leon hurled the stolen blade. It spun through the air, then struck true, driving straight through the man's shoulder and pinning him to a massive tree. "You bastard, I'll kill you." The first warrior Leon had downed recovered, and now came charging, screaming. But his movements were disordered, lacking form. With Leon's extrasensory edge, even punches swift as lightning couldn't find their mark. As more void warriors swarmed toward them, Leon had no intention of wasting more time on that one. He saw his chance. The cold flash of thundercloud blade sliced the air, and the man was gone, lifeless before he hit the ground. Go, everyone, all at once. Even if you have to bite, tear off a chunk of his flesh. Kill him. Leon turned to meet the next wave. Alternating between physical techniques and magic, the battlefield lit up with thunder and lightning, each flash followed by screams and blood. Against these void warriors, Leon still had the upper hand. What he wasn't sure of was whether he could hold the line long enough for Isha's reinforcements to arrive. He could guess. If the Void was launching a full-scale invasion of Samil, then the Silver Dragon Sanctuary wasn't the only place under siege. Aside from Isha, the other dragon kings, like Odin, were surely major targets as well. Otto's would have sent a strong force to strike them down. It all came down to who could finish their fight first and rush to support the Silver Dragon Queen's forces. Die, primitive scum of Samil. The snarl snapped Leon out of his thoughts. He turned toward the voice, just another void warrior rushing toward death. Leon raised a hand, and a burst of lightning arced out like a whip, swallowing the attacker in a flash. Sha-sha. Footsteps rustled from the side. Leon reacted instantly, spun around, and brought his blade down toward the source. But just as the edge of the thunder blade was about to slice through the man's throat, Leon stopped. The blade froze less than a centimeter from the man's carotid artery. Leon stared at the face before him, terror, pressure, defiance, and a twisted mix of countless other emotions. But most of all, it was his eyes. Leon had seen countless expressions in battle. He knew exactly what those eyes meant. They were begging for death. Leon lowered his gaze, judging their distance. At this range, the man could have attacked first, but hadn't. Instead, he had stepped forward, exposed himself to melee. Before Leon could make sense of the man's actions. Thud. He fell to his knees, hands to the ground, trembling. "Kill me, please, kill me. I won't keep serving that lunatic. I'd rather die at someone else's hands. Just kill me already, please let it end." Leon understood now. This man was one of the Void's homeland faction. Safina had told him before, Otto's used slaughter to threaten homeland faction members into obedience. And now, on the day of the final battle, the moment of their awakening had finally come. But with no one able to stand and lead them in rebellion. The only choice left was to seek death on the battlefield. Yet Leon understood. Death could never be a weapon to coerce others into sacrifice. So then why? Why would Otto's dare to send homeland faction members into a battle this critical? That answer came swiftly. Otto's had just unlocked the shackles around Leon. Before the homeland faction soldier in front of him could say another word, his body began to shrivel at a pace visible to the naked eye, withering, collapsing into a dense, dark mass of violet malevolent chi. Amid his anguish scream, the evil mist drifted slowly toward Otto's. At last, the entire cloud was drawn into the demonic sword in Otto's hand, absorbed completely, becoming fuel for the blade. Leon stared in stunned silence, no matter how much he wanted to deny it. Kaiser and the others were right. Otto's is a fucking lunatic. In the distance, Otto's plunged the demonic sword into the earth and bellowed across the battlefield. "Did you see that? If you dare disobey my orders, you won't even get to choose how you die. If you want to live, or at least die clean, then throw away your so-called morals and principles. And then, kill every single Samil bastard in front of you." Sherry was surrounded, caught between two void warriors. She put everything into slaying one of them, but in the process, she suffered severe wounds herself. She staggered back a few steps and collapsed to the ground. The remaining Void Warrior advanced slowly, blade in hand. Sherry bared her silver teeth, face smeared with blood, but the defiant fire in her dragon eyes refused to die. She raised what remained of her inner magic. Desperately, N-A-V-Y-L Cyrillic letter 456, G Cyrillic letter 4 BBT. Only on N-A-V-Y-L Cyrillic letter 456, G Cyrillic letter 4 BBT, trying to summon Dragon Flame. But at this point, she was completely spent. There wasn't a drop of strength left for fire. A flicker of flame danced across her hand, then fizzled. She gasped, choking for breath, her vision going black. Damn it! The Void Warrior now stood directly in front of her. Sherry looked up. He gripped his blade in both hands, the edge pointed directly at her forehead. Come on, if I so much as blink, then I'm not the Silver Dragon Queen's personal guard captain. Clink! The long blade slipped from his grasp and clattered to the ground. His eyes were vacant. He raised his hands, buried his fingers in his hair. How did it come to this? I don't want to kill. I don't want to be part of this war. I just want to go home. I don't want to die. I don't want to die. His voice trembled into a whisper, his expression unraveling. Sherry stared at him in blank confusion. She couldn't understand what was happening. At least I can choose how I die. Fuck you, Autos, I quit. The young Void Warrior's eyes bulged in desperation, madness creeping in. Hands shaking, he reached for the dagger at his waist, and with a shout, he thrust it toward his own throat. Sherry's instincts kicked in. She shut her eyes tightly. But the gush of blood she expected never came. Slowly, she opened her eyes. Standing before her was another man. It was Kaiser. His short violet hair fluttered gently. His tall, lean figure stood like a blade itself. He held the warrior's wrist, halting the suicide. The young man turned his head, and then froze. Kaiser, it's really you. Kaiser nodded slowly. Suicide is the dumbest form of escape. But Kaiser took the dagger from his hand, then strode toward the heart of the battlefield. The chaotic battle momentarily quieted as the two sides noticed the newcomer. Void Warriors paused, staring. Is that Kaiser? He's not dead, but did Autos say he was already? Gone, back again. If Kaiser's here, then where is Safina? Don't tell me he's fighting for Autos again. Paranoia and fear exploded through the ranks of the Void Warriors. Autos also saw him, his former strongest lieutenant. So, you traitors still have the guts to show your face, Autos muttered coldly. Kaiser walked calmly to Leon's side. The wind brushed through his hair. He looked as composed as ever. I'd planned to live out the rest of my life hidden in some forgotten corner of this land, but the man beside me reminded me of something. People inevitably run from things, but when you have the strength to change the world around you, you should give it everything you have. Only then, when you look back one day, will you have no regrets. Autos sneered. You disappear for all this time, and now you show up just to play the victim. Kaiser shook his head, not just that. He closed his eyes, took a long breath, then opened them slowly. Turning to face the Homeland faction soldiers, he spoke loudly. I know many of you remember a girl named Anita. She joined the Homeland faction long ago and gave everything she had to restore our homeland. She was my and my sister Safina's closest friend and the pillar of the Homeland faction. But not long ago, Autos unleashed a massacre against us to force your obedience through slaughter. And Anita, she died in that massacre. No one had forgotten that day. It was the deepest scar in the hearts of every Homeland faction fighter. And to Autos and his descendant faction, that massacre had been a brutally effective tool of control. Kaiser continued. I know you don't want to pick up weapons to fight people from another world, just like I don't. I know you don't want to invade someone else's home just to survive. But for 1,000 years, Autos has used violence to force us into doing things that go against everything we believe in. He won't hesitate to slaughter us to get his way. We've tried resisting before, and we failed. All that awaited us was more cruelty, more blood. We hid our identities. We followed orders we didn't believe in. But today, right now, we're standing on foreign soil. In front of us are people just like us who want to protect their home, and behind us is a tyrant who forces us to kill or be killed. If we still choose silence, still let him pull our strings, then there's no turning back. But Kaiser turned and pointed the dagger at Otto's in the distance. If we resist now, maybe, just maybe, there's still a sliver of hope. We may not get to choose how we die, but we can choose the meaning of our death. Homeland faction warriors, your future is in your hands. He slowly lowered the dagger and stood silently, waiting for their response. Leon looked over the suddenly silent battlefield, tension winding through his chest. To turn enemy soldiers mid-battle was dangerous. Not just for Kaiser, it was far riskier for those Homeland faction members. If they rebelled now, if they rose up, there would be no going back, no forgiveness, no redemption. If they won, they'd be heroes. But if they failed, their fate would be worse than being devoured by Otto's sword. Even Kaiser didn't know how many would follow him, maybe none. But that didn't matter. He had to speak his truth. He wanted the entire descendant faction to hear. Even under tyranny and slaughter, some still chose to walk against the current. Time ticked on, the battlefield stayed quiet. Leon clenched his fist. He knew Kaiser had failed. He raised his hand, gently rested it on Kaiser's shoulder. You've done enough, Kaiser, we. But before he could finish, a furious roar cut him off. ATOS, I'll fucking RIP you apart. The cry ignited the field like a spark on dry grass. Even if I turn to ash, I'll never fight for you again, you maniac. Homeland faction, we're the true future of the void. We can rebuild our world with our own hands. I heard what Kaiser said. We may not get to choose how we die, but we can damn well choose why we die. Fuck it, let's take that bastard down. The Homeland faction, oppressed for 1,000 years, finally chose to fight back. Kaiser's expression, usually calm and unreadable, now carried a faint, gratified smile. The battle reignited. This time, the Descendant faction faced the Silver Dragons and the Homeland faction. The tide turned. Leon let out a long breath. Not bad, Kaiser, should have done this sooner. But Kaiser's smile faded as quickly as it came. He stayed serious, voice steady but grave. There's something else I have to tell you. Leon paused. What is it? Kaiser summoned his longsword and looked toward Otto's. Then he said slowly, Otto's has already fused with the void realm itself. As long as the void exists, he will never die. In other words, we can't kill him. The only way to defeat him is to awaken the power of time and restore the seal on the void gate. Leon bit his lip, thinking. Then he drew Thundercloud Blade, assuming a battle stance facing Otto's. But to awaken the god of time's power, we'd have to have Aurora take Kronos' place. I know. Kaiser paused. He lowered his eyes, as if recalling something distant. And then, his steady voice suddenly cracked with emotion. My sister already found a way. (796). Vol 6, Chapter 160, Abyss of Night. Leon's eyes lit up. Safina has a solution. Kaiser nodded. What is she planning? Leon asked, unable to hide his urgency. She specifically told me not to tell you, Kaiser replied flatly. He paused, then added, all we need to do is hold Otto's off until the Dragon Kings arrive. Their strength is needed to help Aurora. Leon frowned slightly. Safina clearly came up with a way to keep Aurora from ascending the throne, so why won't she say how? But the battlefield was heating up. Since the siblings didn't want to talk about it, Leon didn't press. So, all we have to do is keep Otto's from reaching the Temple of Time until the Dragon Kings arrive. Right. Exactly. Good. Leon ran his hand across the Thundercloud Blade. Instantly, a layer of blue lightning coursed along its surface. Compared to just moments ago, his condition had visibly improved. Aurora had hope. Kaiser and the Homeland faction were now backing him. All that remained was to stall Otto's until the reinforcements arrived. Otto's could wait no longer. He strode toward the three of them, dragging his demonic sword. The blade scraped across the ground, casting up violet sparks as it went. I never thought I'd see the two of you cooperating. He stopped no more than 30 meters away. But the strongest man of Samil and the strongest void warrior. I am looking forward to seeing what kind of surprise this so-called alliance of the strongest will bring me. With that, Ottos swung his sword. The sound howled across the battlefield as immense void energy surged outward, flooding the area. The pressure crashed down like an invading army. Some weaker combatants on the field immediately coughed up blood. The violent energy storm blew apart nearby wreckage and corpses alike. And yet, Leon, Kaiser, and Elle stood firm. "There's one more thing I should tell you, Leon," Kaiser said quietly. "Go ahead. Even if the three of us join forces and fight with everything we have, we won't be able to do anything to him." Kaiser dropped into a crouch. His longsword pulsed with a deep, dark void glow. "In short, we're facing an enemy that can't be overpowered and can't be killed. Do you understand?" He said this crushing truth with unsettling calm. Leon, though visibly shaken at first, took a breath and reset his stance. "I had a feeling it would be something like that." He spoke softly. "It's fine. Our goal isn't to kill him anyway. All we need is to buy time for Aurora and your sister." Kaiser gave a small nod and lowered his gaze, thoughtful. After a brief silence, he replied in a low voice. "Yeah, that's right." "All right then, let's go." Leon had always taken pride in his power. Not arrogance, not cruelty, not delusion, just a pure and honest pride. A boy's pride in his strength. In every battle he'd faced, even against powerful enemies like Shadow, he had never truly felt there was someone he couldn't defeat. Until now. Ottos, a tyrant fused with the Void Realm itself, undying, unbeatable. His very existence shattered Leon's sense of reality. Even he, Leon Kazmod, had to admit it, there was always someone stronger, always something beyond. The gap wasn't just real, it was monstrous. In any other moment, the sheer weight of it might have broken him. But now wasn't the time. Behind him stood Kaiser and Elle. Beneath his feet was his homeland. So even if the enemy could not be overcome, he would still raise his blade and fight. After a tense moment of silence, Leon and Kaiser vanished from sight. They reappeared on opposite flanks of Ottos, launching a pincer strike. Thundercloud blade and the abyss of night lashed toward him in unison. Arcs of lightning and flashes of violet energy screamed through the air, both strikes aimed straight for Ottos's vital points. But Ottos didn't even lift his sword. He merely tapped the ground with its tip. A burst of dark flame exploded outward, blasting Leon and Kaiser back simultaneously. Too slow. Ottos raised the blade and spun it. The sword cut a ruthless line through the air, a deadly trajectory aimed straight at Leon. The sharp edge hissed forward, leaving behind a gleaming afterimage. But instead of pressing the attack, Ottos turned toward Kaiser. Kaiser barely managed to stabilize himself midair. Before he could land, Ottos was already in front of him. "Shit." Kaiser brought his sword up and raised his other arm to guard his head. His instincts were sharp. He knew to protect the vital points first. But Otto smirked, "It's useless." The instant the words fell, Ottos unleashed a devastating omnidirectional strike. A wave of black-violet energy swallowed Kaiser whole. And everything behind him. The explosion carved a massive, 10-meter-wide trench into the battlefield. Once it ended, Ottos didn't even glance at the damage. He turned back toward Leon. Leon struggled to open his eyes, trying to steady himself mid-fall. He spotted the sword flying toward him. Reacting quickly, he raised Thundercloud blade to block. Just as the demonic sword was about to make contact, a black shadow flashed in front of Leon. Someone caught letter 1D40D, letter 1D428, letter 1D42F, letter 1D41E, letter 1D425, letter 1D422, letter 1D42D, the blade by its hilt. So fast. Leon didn't even have time to finish the thought before Ottos countered. He flipped his sword upward in a deadly rising arc. A towering slash of sword energy erupted from the earth, launching Leon into a massive boulder. The rock exploded on impact. The moment the energy wave faded, a secondary explosion rocked the land. Boom! Flames soared into the air, the ground trembled, smoke consumed the field. Kaiser, Leon, and Elle, all repelled in under 3 seconds. In that fleeting instant, Otto's not only crushed the three of them, he seized total control of the battlefield. Enemy or ally, it made no difference. Everyone within Otto's range was annihilated. Dozens of plumes of violet mist rose from the corpses, drawn like moths to flame into the demonic sword's core. Otto's didn't care who died. Dead or alive, they all became fuel. He slung the sword across his shoulder and looked around at the ruins. What, are you all dead already? I haven't even started. Boom! 2 boulders collapsed in the distance. Leon emerged from the rubble, coughing, his clothes in tatters. His face was streaked with blood. He stood atop the debris and looked down at Otto's. After this day, no one will dare throw a rock at me again. I swear, I'll kill you. Otto's raised a brow. What the hell are you? He was cut off by a sound from the other direction. Kaiser rose slowly from the trench, bracing on his sword. He dusted himself off, adjusted his stance, and looked at Otto's. You train me to be the strongest void warrior. Even if the gap between us is vast, you should know, that last strike wasn't enough to kill me. Otto's snorted. Still spouting the same crap. You always could say the most infuriating things in the calmest tone. Kaiser flicked his sword into position again. You taught us that emotion is useless in battle. HMPH, if you'd really followed my teachings, you wouldn't have betrayed me. That's exactly why I left. I realized that teaching was a lie. Kaiser's voice finally rose, trembling with power. Emotion gives us will, and will gives us the strength to rise again, to draw life from our repeated losses and be reborn. Otto's, whose mind had long been corrupted by the void, could not understand the meaning behind Kaiser's words. He raised his sword and murmured, Then I'll just kill you over and over again, until your will, your soul, and your abyss of night are all buried here. I'm waiting, Otto's. Energy surged around Kaiser, sending ripples across the battlefield. The earth shook as he poured all his strength into his sword. Abyss of night flared with radiant violet light. Take this. He exploded forward, blade raised. Abyss of night, fatal severance. Seeing the move, Otto's shifted into a defensive stance. You really want to beat me. Bringing out that move right away, that's the one that took down the last, strongest void warrior, wasn't it? Fine, let's see what your precious technique can really do. Thunder boomed behind him. He turned to see red mist rising from the ruined stone pile, mist laced with crackling lightning. Don't forget me. Leon raised Thundercloud blade high. Waves of pressure rippled outward from his feet. Magic surged into the blade. The metal trembled with power. He leapt forward like a living bolt of lightning. 9 gates night will flash severance. 1 from the front, 1 from behind. The strongest attacks from 2 worlds, together they struck toward Otto's. Otto's narrowed his eyes. That's the move that defeated Shadow. But the next moment, his concern vanished. HMPH, you must have forgotten. Back then, your flash severance only worked because of human support and future Noah's seal. But now you don't have. Before he could finish, a small black figure appeared behind him, leaping high into the air. Primordial magic, divine radiance aurora. (797). Vol 6, Chapter 161, She Will. Otto's had indeed done his homework on Leon's family. He could recite every member's personality and history from memory. But there was one thing he hadn't studied thoroughly. Noah's stealth attack. To Noah, it was almost a conceptual level skill. So long as her target was at Super Dragon King level or higher, and she was not in their direct line of sight, then in exactly 3 seconds, they would always suffer a strike from behind. Even someone like Old Constantine or Kaiser had been caught off guard by it before. Now Otto's found himself flanked, assaulted from above and from both sides, a perfect, inescapable killing triangle. And just as he hesitated, the divine radiance aurora from above locked him completely in place. Leon and Kaiser's attacks followed immediately. Thundercloud Flash and Fatal Severance both cleaved at his waist from front and back. The moment the blade and the sword touched Otto's body, he erupted with a violent burst of power to resist. Magic clashed, explosions and shockwaves tore across the battlefield. To keep him pinned down, Noah pushed her primordial mode to its absolute limit, pouring every drop of power into the divine radiance aurora. Within her consciousness, her dragon ancestor manifested as a great white dragon, channeling their ancestral bloodline's power to Noah more efficiently. Kaiser's fatal severance, his trump card. Otto's had just called it the move Kaiser once used to defeat the previous strongest void warrior, and it was true. That technique had once solidified Kaiser's prestige in the void realm. As for Leon, cloaked in lightning and blood-red mist, he was pushing his 9 gates Nightwheel to its absolute maximum, focusing all that force into Thundercloud Blade. Back during his final duel with Shadow, Leon had succeeded in using Thundercloud Flash to defeat him, but the Thundercloud Blade had nearly shattered from the overload. At the time, he hadn't yet been to Undying Island. He hadn't found the Doughtborn clan, who taught him how to restore and upgrade the blade. Since then, no enemy had ever been worthy enough for him to unleash Thundercloud Blade's full might. Until now. Until Otto's. The blade trembled, lightning roared. This time, Leon's power far exceeded what he had used against Shadow. And Thundercloud Blade held. More than that, its upgraded form released that power more efficiently than ever. It was a weapon tailor-made for Leon, forged not only to carry his strength, but to amplify it. "You think the 3 of you could beat me? What a joke." Otto's roared, void energy bursting from his body in waves of catastrophic force. The resulting wind and shock blew apart every rock, corpse, and tree within hundreds of meters. Nothing remained but cracked earth and the 4 of them. "Kaiser, you'll pay for your betrayal. I'll kill you and Safina both myself." He screamed as he twisted his body to glare behind him, through the rising blood mist, and locked eyes with Leon's unwavering, burning gaze. "You think just because you've beaten a few dragon kings and reclaimed one of my discarded students, you're some kind of savior? Ha, don't make me laugh. Today, when I kill you, I'll make sure you understand what it means to watch your family die, your homeland burn, and to be powerless to stop it." The wind whipped through Leon's hair, but not a flicker of doubt crossed his face. The blood mist of Nightwheel burned around him, a blaze of indomitable will. Clutching Thundercloud Blade, he raised his voice through the thunder. "I'll wipe every last one of you invaders off this earth, one by one. No more words needed." His voice fell, and with it, lightning and bloodfire tore upward from the ground, illuminating the black-violet sky. Kaiser's roar grew stronger, his strength surging ever higher. Leon had fully activated 9 gates, Nightwheel, lightning and violet light intertwining, amplified by Noah's divine force. And the tyrant was swallowed whole by the storm of light. No one knew how much time passed. When the light faded, the exhausted trio had collapsed in 3 separate directions. Their chests heaved, their breath came in painful, gasping pulls. Leon forced himself to sit up and look toward the center of the blast. There, Otto's had been split in 2. Leon and Kaiser's strikes had severed his torso clean through from front and back. Now there was no longer Otto's, but upper Otto's and lower Otto's. Noah and Kaiser stirred slowly, regaining consciousness. The overachiever princess was dazed, the blast having rattled her head. As she steadied herself, she narrowed her eyes at the distance. "Did we do it?" Kaiser rose with difficulty, using Abyss of Night to prop himself up. He stared at the bisected Otto's, then narrowed his eyes. No. It's not that simple." He gritted his teeth. "That's Otto's." No sooner had the words left his mouth than Otto's lower half dissolved into violet mist, vanishing with a twisted laugh. But the upper half began regenerating. Bones, muscles, organs rebuilt at an unnatural pace. In mere seconds, Otto's was whole again. He stood with a contorted, eerie posture. The eyeball embedded in his sword bulged and twisted, more grotesque than ever. He laughed with one hand on his face, the other gripping his sword. A laugh that wormed through the bones. Leon watched grimly. He had already expected this. Kaiser had warned him Otto's was fused with the void realm. He couldn't truly be killed. Still, seeing a man who'd just been cut in half regenerate before his eyes, it was hard to accept. Suddenly, Otto's fell silent. His gaze swept over the three of them. I'll admit, just for a second, you surprised me, a brat, a former disciple, and a madman ready to die, and you actually managed to split me. But that's all. Now this little game ends. Are you ready? In a blink, Otto's appeared in front of Kaiser. Before Kaiser could even react, a kick landed under his chin, sending him flying. Next, he was behind Leon. Leon's superhuman reflexes kicked in. He sensed Otto's movement instantly, but it didn't matter. Otto's speed, NAVY go to GHT. Read the full story, outpaced even Leon's ultra sense. Leon had barely raised his arm when Otto's sidekick launched him through the air. Dad! Noah screamed, trying to activate her primordial mode. But before she could even move, a shadow flashed. Don't rush, little brat, your turn's next. Otto's grabbed her by the wrist and seized her throat. Just a chokehold, and it was enough to forcefully shut down her primordial mode. Otto's had once again demonstrated his overwhelming, crushing power. All three were launched in the same direction and fell together. Noah, are you okay? Leon ignored the stabbing pain in his chest and rushed to her side. Noah coughed violently, blood at her lips. She opened her eyes slowly in his arms. I'm okay, Dad. This guy is just too strong, beyond anything we've ever faced. An enemy that could take down Leon, Kaiser, and Noah in seconds. How were they supposed to win? Footsteps echoed from the distance. Otto strolled forward, dragging his sword. In his free hand, a glowing violet orb. Well then, my dear three, what a pity you won't get to see the day I take over Samuel. He hurled the orb at them. The purple light reflected in all their eyes. In that moment, despair surged like a tidal wave. Leon's heart sank, but he reacted instantly. He shielded Noah with his body. Kaiser murmured under his breath. Sorry, sis. Boom. Wind and heat blasted across Leon's face. No pain followed. He opened his eyes. In front of him stood a massive warhammer. The next moment, a pillar of flame crashed down from the heavens, shattering Otto's energy. With a familiar superhero landing, a massive figure rose. Fire Dragon King Constantine, hammer in hand. I've been watching for a while. Took me forever to find the perfect moment to jump in. A Constantine. Don't listen to that yellow-scaled idiot, came a cool voice. A graceful blue figure walked into view, her hand to her waist, streams of elegant water curling at her side. See Dragon Queen Claudia. Like you, we in the sacred north couldn't use our teleportation crystals. Void power was suppressing them. That's why we couldn't come help right away. Claudia, Leon whispered. Boom. The earth shook. Several dragons landed behind them, returning to human form. Big Sis, Mevis, Odin, Morgan, even the Tower Master. Sorry, Odin said. We set out for the Silver Dragon Sanctuary the moment the Void invaded. We were delayed by ambushes on the way. You did well holding out this long, kid. Now it's our turn. The Dragon King stood before Leon's team, shielding the wounded. The moment radiated divine force. Anyone would have felt safe in that presence. But, Big Sis, Leon said, walking forward with Noah in his arms, please go to the sanctuary. Rosvisser needs you more. He gently passed Noah into Isha's arms. Isha stared at him, then at the battered Noah. What do you mean, Leon? This is the front line. Why send us to the rear? Another Dragon King frowned. Do you remember what I told you about Aurora and the god of time? Isha nodded. Yes, why? There's someone who can stop it. Her name is Safina, but she needs your help to save Aurora from that fate. Leon's voice was firm. Our time is short. Kaiser and I can still hold Otto's back for a while. Please go find Rosvisser now. The Dragon Kings exchanged glances. No one moved. If Leon says someone can save Aurora, we trust him. Everyone move. Constantine hoisted his hammer and unfurled his wings, taking flight toward the sanctuary. The others followed. Isha clutched Noah to her chest, looked back at Leon, and whispered, That girl, Safina, I hope she really can save Aurora. Kaiser stepped forward, clutching his aching chest, but his voice was resolute. She definitely will. $798. Vol 6, Chapter 162, 17,000,001. Teacher Safina. Aurora blinked in confusion. What are you doing here? Safina smiled and gently poked Aurora on the forehead. Same as you, I snuck in. As a god, one wasn't supposed to show emotion. But standing off to the side, silently listening to the exchange between Aurora and Safina, Kronos couldn't help but think. What utter nonsense, illogical and forced. This time palace had been empty for tens of thousands of years, and now two people had snuck in within the same day. Perhaps when the next heir takes the throne, they can renovate the security system, Kronos thought to himself. Aurora's eyes widened, then she shook her head. No, Teacher Safina, I don't mean how you got in. I mean, what are you doing here? Safina's smile slowly faded. She lifted her violet eyes to the giant hourglass, then looked across at Kronos. Why else? I came to save you from the great god of time. Aurora froze. Save me. Safina nodded. That's right. I already know your situation, and I heard most of the conversation just now. To put it simply, if you succeed Kronos and imprison yourself eternally on the time throne, you can save the continent of Samil and your family. Hearing that, the surprise and excitement in Aurora's eyes gave way to a quiet, heavy sadness. She lowered her gaze, bit her lip. So, you were going to sacrifice yourself without hesitation. You'd rather stay here in this cold, empty palace forever than watch your family suffer under the void's claws. Is that it? Aurora nodded silently. After a moment, she whispered, I remember Teacher Mevis said that in her unaltered timeline, Shadow ruled over the Samil continent. For a long time, my whole family was hunted by Shadow. It was a terrible time, utterly hopeless. And it was precisely that hopelessness that drove future Big Sister to return to our present, help us defeat Shadow, and rewrite the ending. As she spoke, Aurora looked up at Safina. Her pink eyes were clear now, no longer fogged with uncertainty, but bright with determination. But now we have no help from the future. No one else can take my place. So, if this is the one way to save everyone, then I'm willing to make that sacrifice. Safina crossed her arms and looked down at her. She was just a little girl, barely old enough to be called a warrior. Yet the weight of her mind and spirit surpassed anyone Safina had ever met. A hero through and through. But there's something I still don't understand, Aurora. Safina spoke gently. Of the four sisters, you're the most energetic, the one who loves crowds and chaos the most. If you choose to inherit the mantle of time, then for the next 10,000 years or more, you'll be utterly alone in this palace. Can you bear that kind of solitude? For someone who loved freedom, the cruelest punishment wasn't death. It was the loss of that freedom. The time throne wasn't a seat, it was a prison, one that would shackle not just Aurora's body, but her spirit. She loved fun, excitement, novelty. She adored life and everything in it. And if she took that throne, she would lose it all. No laughter, no warmth, no kindness, only endless timelines. For another person, such solitude might not be unbearable. But this was Aurora. This was Little Light, the girl who burned with life and passion. For her, loneliness was torture. Safina had come to know her these past few months. She knew her heart. That was why she asked. Could she endure it? And Aurora's answer was honest. I can't, to be honest, Teacher Safina. Just thinking about it makes me want to cry. This time her voice cracked. Finally, she sounded like the child she truly was. Safina had struck her deepest fear. You ask her if the sacrifice is worth it, she'd say yes. You ask her if she's scared, she'd say no. But you ask her, can you bear eternal isolation? Then even if she wanted to lie. She couldn't. Because the truth was, she was afraid. Aurora's head drooped. Her long pink hair hung over her face, hiding her expression. But from the way her little shoulders shook, from her clenched fists, Safina could see the real Little Light, finally breaking through. Not a little hero, just a little girl, scared and fragile. But I don't have a choice. Aurora sniffled, trying hard to keep her voice steady, even though it wavered. I don't want to be here alone. I don't want to leave mom and dad or big sister and second sister. If she can't find me, she'll cry. She'll cry for a really long time. And if I'm gone, third sister will have to sleep in the dorms alone. What if she has nightmares? What if she sleeps in and gets scolded? Teacher Safina, I'm not just afraid of being alone. I can't live without them. She gripped her pants tightly and forced herself to look up. When Safina saw the look on that child's face, her heart clenched. Tears soaked her pink hair, strands clinging to her pale cheeks. In her eyes, terror and resolve fought for dominance. She had chosen, but she still doubted. She still hesitated. Safina's heart ached. Why should a child this small have to bear so much? But, in all 17 million timelines, I still ascend the throne. Aurora steadied her voice, turned to look at Kronos and the time throne behind him. Fate is inevitable, so I will face it. I'm Leon Kazmod's daughter. I'm not afraid of anything. Kronos stared silently at her. For some reason, something ancient within his long-frozen heart stirred for a moment. But it passed. He shifted his gaze to Safina. I did not see you in the web of time. That means you are of the void realm, aren't you? Safina nodded. And knowing I'm from the void, you still don't strike me. Gods have no right to interfere with the affairs of mortals. Even if you are from the void, it is irrelevant to me. He paused, then asked, But you just said you came here to save little light from me. I'm curious. How? Safina's expression sharpened. She stepped forward and placed herself between Kronos and Aurora. You said there are 17 million outcomes, all of which end with Aurora on that throne. But there's one exception. Kronos raised a brow. I'm sure you heard. That single outcome comes from an incomplete web of time. As a mere mortal from the void, do you really think you can repair it? Even I cannot do that. Safina smiled faintly. I'm not here to fix the web. I'm here to tell you why it's incomplete. Kronos' brow creased. Why? You said it yourself, Safina said, each word clear and slow. The web of time cannot track anyone beyond the continent of Samil. I am from the void. At N Avi Ye L Cyrillic letter 456 G Cyrillic letter 4BB Te. Continue reading. That moment, realization flashed through Kronos' eyes. Safina's purple pupils shimmered. Mysterious, radiant sigils bloomed across their surface. That missing thread exists because of me. If not one of those 17 million outcomes can change this child's fate, then I am outcome 17,000,001. $799. Vol 6, Chapter 163, Redemption. As Safina's final words fell, the entire time palace fell utterly silent. Only the faint sound of sand trickling through the great hourglass beneath their feet could be heard. They stood frozen, facing each other. Aurora, eyes still pink and swollen from crying, glanced at Kronos, then looked back at Safina beside her. Teacher, I don't quite get it. You said that incomplete web of time exists because of you? And in that outcome, I don't take the throne, which means someone else succeeds Kronos. She pressed a hand to her chest, pink irises trembling slightly. That person, is it you? She found it hard to believe. Yes, based on the logic of the web of time, it was technically possible Safina was linked to that anomaly. But to jump straight to the conclusion that she could replace Kronos, that she could sit upon the time throne instead of Aurora. It was far too much, too reckless. Not to mention, Safina was from the void realm. She wasn't even from the continent of Samil. And none of her powers had anything to do with time. Aurora had been chosen by Kronos precisely because she had bent time, disturbed the web. She had the potential. But Safina, how could she possibly bear such a burden? What exactly do you plan to do? Kronos finally spoke, his tone quiet and measured. I cannot pass the divine power of a god to you. You cannot wield time. This is the law that governs the inheritance of divine power, and it cannot be changed. Even if the web of time cannot observe those beyond Samil, that one anomaly. It might not even exist because of you, right? Both Aurora's doubts and Kronos' skepticism fell into the air like stones. But Safina remained calm. Every rule has its loophole. Even the primordial gods of Samil could never account for abilities beyond their understanding. And I happen to possess a power that can bypass those rules. As for whether that one exception truly exists because of me, we'll find out right now. Right now. Krana's raised a brow. As soon as the words left her lips, the doors of the Time Palace slowly creaked open. Rosvisser stepped inside, holding her divine spear. Mom. Aurora. The spear dissolved into light and reverted to its snowy beast form. Rosvisser rushed forward and dropped to her knees, tears welling in her eyes. Thank the stars, you're really here. She embraced her daughter, gently stroking the soft tips of her pink hair. I thought you went with Dad to stop the Void invasion. How did? Rosvisser pulled back slightly, grasping Aurora's small wrists and looking into her eyes. Aurora, I'm sure you already know about the God of Time, so I won't beat around the bush. Seeing Safina nearby only confirmed what Rosvisser had feared. Aurora already knew. But I want you to trust me, trust your dad. Even if you don't inherit Time's power, we can still defeat the bad guys. Okay. Her voice was rushed, almost panicked. She just wanted to get her daughter out of this place. She gently wiped the tears from Aurora's cheeks, her gaze full of aching tenderness. Come on, sweetie, let's go home. Moon and Muse are waiting for you. Rosvisser reached out to lift her daughter. But Aurora suddenly stepped back. Wait, Mom. Rosvisser froze. What's wrong? Aurora didn't answer. She simply turned her gaze to Safina. Rosvisser followed her line of sight. Teacher Safina says she has a way to change the ending. A flicker of hope crossed Rosvisser's eyes. She said that, is it true? Safina nodded. It is, but I need your help and the help of the other dragon kings. My sister and the others should arrive soon, but how do you plan to? She stopped herself. Because in truth, the how wasn't what she needed to ask. What she needed to know was, why are you helping us? It was the same question Aurora had wanted to ask. Safina's plan might be promising, but why did she care at all? Both mother and daughter looked at her. Even Krana's, god though he was, remained quiet, waiting to hear her reason. After a pause, Safina crossed her arms and looked up at the hourglass on the ceiling. She let out a long breath before speaking. Because of Leon. Dad. Ahem. She brought her gaze back to the two of them. When my brother and I fled the void, hoping to live out our miserable days in some corner of Samil, he gave us a chance to climb out of the abyss to start over. We had no purpose. We didn't know what we were living for. She looked down at her palm. We had all this strength, and no idea how to use it. What was my dumb brother supposed to spend his life stealing carrots in a vegetable garden? She chuckled to herself, then went on. With Leon's help, we enrolled in St. Heath Academy. That was the first time we had any hope again. It was there that I met Noah and Moon and Muse and Aurora. She reached out to ruffle Aurora's hair, a gentle smile forming at the corners of her lips. They're such clever, sweet little girls. My brother got close with Moon and Muse. He even took lessons from Muse on how to play Samil's instruments. Of course, he's terrible. Every note he plays is hideous. As for me, I saw a lot of my childhood self in Noah. She pushes herself to protect her sisters, works harder than anyone. But unlike me, Noah was strong enough to protect Helena. I lost my Anita. Safina's voice faltered. Even now, saying that name made her eyes dim. That wound never healed. Her closest friend, the most important person in her life. Gone without even a proper goodbye. But she quickly collected herself. Whenever I saw the girls together, I couldn't stop thinking of her. That's why, when I first met Noah, Helena, and others, my emotions were a mess, all over the place, until this little pink-haired menace showed up in my life. She smiled again, soft and genuine. She looked at Aurora with a gaze full of warmth. If Noah is who I used to be, yet Hen Aurora is who I wish I could have been. Bright, free, unburdened, doing what she wants, loving who she wants, being loved as much as she damn well pleases. Leon, had he been there, would have understood her completely. He knew better than anyone, Safina's cheerfulness wasn't natural. It was defense, it was armor, a persona crafted to survive something far darker. That's why she said Aurora was the girl she dreamed of becoming. I like this little gremlin, Safina said with a smile, and I like the other girls too. I don't want them to be the ones who save me and my brother. I want to protect them this time, and it turns out. Leon's little trap worked. We found our purpose again. She turned slowly, gaze resolute, and met Kronos' eyes. Leon, Noah, Aurora, they taught me something. If you have the power to do something, then you must with everything you've got, so you never, ever regret it later. I couldn't save Anita, but now I can save someone else's Anita. That's why I'm doing this for them, for the Melkve family. Rosvisser squeezed Aurora's hand tightly. They listened to everything she said, every word. And from those words, Rosvisser could feel not just the joy of rebirth, but a desperate desire for redemption. Safina and Kaiser had done many terrible things under Otto's. Their hands were stained with guilt. Leon had given them a chance to rediscover who they were. They had already reclaimed their purpose, but redemption, true redemption, required action. No one forced her, no one judged her. But Safina wanted to break her own chains. And this was her only chance to make things right. Such a thorough reason. It would be a pity if you didn't have a plan to match. Kronos finally spoke. Safina snorted, "Of course I do. Remember what I said. Even the gods of Samil can't account for powers beyond their comprehension." Kronos remained expressionless. "And you say you possess such a power. What is it?" Safina's violet eyes gleamed. Within them, mysterious patterns shimmered like stars on the surface of deep water. The mirror abyss eyes. "I'm going to copy the divine power of time." "800. Vol 6, Chapter 164, Outlasting Eternity. Mirror abyss eyes." Though Rosvisser had never seen Safina's mirror abyss eyes in action herself, she'd heard plenty from Leon, Vita, and Cecilia. Whether it was an offensive magic like Thousand Dragon Wrath, or even a transformation like Dragonification, the mirror abyss eyes could replicate them all. Its only true counter. Super sense. The mirror abyss eyes couldn't mimic movements made, while someone was in a supersensory state. That was how Leon had defeated Safina back during the trial of the fire spirit stallion, by relying on supersense. So in summary, yes, the mirror abyss eyes possessed astonishing, borderline reality-defying mimicry powers. But in the end, it was still just a weapon, one with a clear weakness. And now Safina was claiming she was going to use it, to copy the divine power of time. It's the power of the divine. That sounded a little delusional. Kronos' tone was flat. "Even Otto's didn't dare attack me until I was on the brink of collapse, and your so-called mirror abyss eyes is just another void-born technique. Even if its ability is somewhat unique, it doesn't mean it can replicate the power of a god." Aurora hesitated too. "But Teacher Safina, the mirror abyss eyes is still just a mortal ability. How could it possibly copy the power of the time god?" Safina lowered her eyes, looking at Aurora with a faint smile. "It's not about copying divine power in the broad sense. Remember, Aurora, beyond powers and abilities, the mirror abyss eyes can also copy form. I know perfectly well that replicating the actual force of time would be absurd. That would be pure fantasy. But what if we sidestep the power of the time god and focus instead on copying the form of the time god?" Aurora's mind clicked, and she immediately caught on. "Oh, I get it now, teacher. Compared to raw power, which is unstable and elusive, a divine form is far more fixed and reproducible. You're saying you want to copy the form of the time god, not its powers." "Right." Safina smiled, pleased. "Exactly." She paused and then lifted her gaze to Kronos. "However, the current time god is already on his last legs. If I copy your form as it is now, it probably wouldn't last long. So, Aurora." Safina turned back to her. "You'll need to first accept his remaining power. Become the new time god in form. And then, N-A-V-Y-L Cyrillic letter 456 G Cyrillic letter 4 BBT. Only on N-A-V-Y-L Cyrillic letter 456 G Cyrillic letter 4 BBT, I'll use the mirror abyss eyes to copy you. Only then can we completely bypass the restriction of the rules." Kronos had already acknowledged Aurora as his heir. He would only ever pass on his power to her. That was the law of divine inheritance. But what happened after she inherited that power? That was no longer under Kronos' jurisdiction. His own words, after all, had been, "Gods have no right to interfere in the affairs of mortals." "Well then," Safina said with a sly grin, "surely I'm allowed to copy your heir's form using my mirror abyss eyes." What if your heir doesn't consent?" Kronos asked flatly. "Haha, thing is, your heir is just like me. Don't you think she'd say yes?" Safina had found the system's loophole, and now she was going to exploit it with surgical precision. She had dodged every single bad ending and carved out the one path of hope for the Melkve family. Now, only one problem remained. Even if the mirror abyss eyes can replicate the time god's form, you alone wouldn't have enough magical power to do it right. Every spell, formation, transformation, or technique that used a magical item, all of it required mana to function. It was Magic 101. Want a light bulb to shine, you need electricity. Quantified simply, a level 10 spell needs 1 unit of mana. A level 100 spell needs 10 units. Spells like Dragon Cataclysm or Thousand Birds, Safina could handle them solo. But something on the level of the time god? Absolutely not. Her own mana wouldn't come close. Aurora's eyes flicked, something clicked. "Teacher, you said earlier you'd need help from the Dragon Kings. So it's to power the mirror abyss eyes, right? To force it to replicate the time god." Safina gave a proud, approving smile. "Exactly." "Wait," Rosvisser cut in. "Leon once told me the Void's energy system is different from Samuel's. So how will you convert our mana into something you can use?" Safina was ready for this. "I already studied that. In your royal library, I poured through dozens of books. I spent a long time researching the conversion between the two worlds' energies. For anyone else, this would have been impossible. But my brother and I have always had strange bodies. The more he fights, the stronger he gets, and I can adapt to any type of energy. That's how I can fully control the mirror abyss eyes in the first place. So converting the Dragon Kings, magic into energy I can use. It's not a problem, I can do it." Aurora blinked in realization. "Then the notes you kept writing in the library, that was your research on energy conversion." Ahem. Aurora nodded, but she wasn't smiling. She bit her lip, then quietly asked, "Teacher, so you'd already made your decision back then?" Safina smiled faintly. She reached out and ruffled Aurora's hair. "No need for you to make any choices anymore, Aurora. We've already decided. All that's left is to carry it out." She gave her a reassuring pat on the shoulder, then turned to Rosvisser. "Your Majesty, any word on when the reinforcements will arrive?" Rosvisser quickly ran the numbers in her head. Teleportation spells are still disabled, but several hours have passed since Otto's launched his full-scale invasion. That should have been enough time for Isha and the others to fly to Silver Dragon Sanctuary. They'll be here soon. Rosvisser opened her mouth to say something more, then hesitated. Safina noticed immediately. "Your Majesty," she asked gently, "is there something else you want to say?" Rosvisser lowered her gaze and looked at Aurora. She hesitated, then slowly spoke. "You're about to take Aurora's place on the throne. That means you'll never be able to leave this place. So, what about Kaiser? You may never see him again." A cruel truth. A painful truth. But an unavoidable one. Yes, it would stab Safina's heart in the short term. But in the long run, it was still better than letting Aurora live out eternity in solitude. Safina closed her eyes, thinking carefully. Then finally, she whispered, "I believe we'll meet again. As long as we outlast eternity, we'll reunite in the distant future." (801) Vol 6, Chapter 165.1, The Five Divine Spirits 1. Isha and the other Dragon Kings quickly arrived at the Trial Palace. Although it was located behind the Silver Dragon Sanctuary in a remote area, the golden splendor of the grand structure made it impossible to overlook. "Big sis, you're here." Isha hurried forward. She glanced at Aurora and Safina, then looked at Rosvisser and asked urgently, "Little Ross, your husband said this place needed our help more urgently. What's going on?" Rosvisser briefly, N.A.V. original source, explained Safina's plan to the assembled Dragon Kings. After listening, Odin shook his head and said gravely, "You want to use someone from the Void Realm as the power source for Samuel's original god. I don't know if that girl Safina can really pull it off, but what I do know is, the last time someone tried something similar, Sky City was nearly obliterated in a single strike." He was clearly referring to the incident involving the theft of divine dragon power. The implication behind his words was simple: he didn't trust Safina. And aside from Rosvisser's family, none of those present fully trusted someone from the void. Safina could see the distrust in their eyes, but she didn't explain much. She only said coolly, "I know you don't trust me. I don't need to prove anything. But what you do need to know is this. Today, I'm here helping Aurora entirely because of the man currently on the front lines fighting alongside my brother, buying time against Otto's. If you can't trust me then, can't you at least trust Leon Kazmod?" That name alone, Leon, represented absolute credibility and honor in the eyes of the Dragon Kings. The moment Safina said it, Odin and the others looked at one another in hesitation. After a brief silence, the Tower Master asked, "What do you need us to do?" Their suspicion and misgivings hadn't disappeared, but none of them could afford to waste any more time. What Safina had said wasn't just to make them realize she had earned Leon's trust long ago. It was a reminder to every Dragon King present. "We don't have much time left." Otto's was battling just a few dozen li away. At any moment, he could break through and reach the Palace of Time. So would they keep debating whether Safina was trustworthy, or would they help her save Aurora and Samuel? The answer was obvious. "Just channel your magic into me," Safina said. "I'll convert your Simalian magic into void energy to activate mirror abyss eyes and mimic the form of the next god of time." Understood. Once the plan was agreed on, the Dragon Kings lined up behind Safina in a row. Safina then turned to Aurora. "You can begin, Aurora. As long as you're here, I'm not afraid." Her words were short, very short. But they brought reassurance. Aside from her parents and big sister, this was the first time someone had made Aurora feel this safe, with just a single sentence. She pressed her lips together, then nodded firmly. "Okay." She turned and stood atop the massive hourglass that had nearly reached capacity, looking across to the opposite end where Kronos stood. I'm ready." Kronos looked at the array of people facing him. Even as a god, he couldn't help but sigh internally. What strange people this continent and the void have birthed. Safina's plan had clearly backed this once sovereign god into a thoroughly awkward position. At first, he had insisted that Aurora must become a god. Fine, Safina was going to let him have it his way. But the moment he passed the power of time to Aurora, she would immediately copy it. And if he refused now, then he would disgrace the name of the god of time. These complicated thoughts wouldn't change Kronos's ultimate decision. As the god who governed time, he had no power to resist. The 17th layer spirit construct, is it? Then let me take a good look before I leave this world. As he spoke, Kronos lightly waved his right hand. Golden energy slowly rose from the hourglass beneath their feet, curling around Aurora like dancing spirits. Even Safina, someone from the void, could feel the holiness and reverence of this power. The sacred golden light shimmered in everyone's eyes. "So this is the power of time," Rosvisser murmured in awe. Odin refocused, shifting his gaze from the golden aura to Kronos himself. After a moment, the Thunder Dragon King spoke solemnly. "My friends, we are witnessing history, a moment that will outlive us all, the passing of an original god and the birth of a new one. This is a moment many generations might never get the chance to see, even in a lifetime. Let's just take it in." As Odin said those words, the others began to sense it too. Underneath that golden aura, they could see the silhouette of a worn, aging man. He was using the last of his strength to tell the story of his life, his memories and his glory. Behind him, countless strands of the time web shimmered, displaying scenes of his journey alongside the other original gods in forging this world. The crowd watched in reverent silence, stunned. The end of an original god was unfolding before their eyes. His growth, his confusion, his lows and his triumphs. All of it eventually turned into the grains of sand beneath Aurora's feet, flowing toward a reborn future. Aurora, Kronos said, I don't know who will ultimately sit on the throne of time, whether it's you or not, but the only one I recognize as the new god is you. So, as a god, I want you to understand something. The responsibility on your shoulders is far heavier than you can imagine, and that has nothing to do with whether you actually sit upon the throne. Kronos exhaled softly as he closed his eyes. It was only in that moment that he truly let go of his divine burden, releasing the emotions of an ordinary person. Old friends, thank you for waiting. As his voice faded, Kronos's figure began to dissolve, dispersing into countless flickering specks of light that drifted into the interwoven strands of time. The fall of a god was silent, just like they had always silently watched over Samuel. Aurora lowered her gaze to her hands. She could feel a new power surging within her. It wasn't overwhelming or majestic like she had imagined, just a faint, quiet strength. But she could clearly sense it. This tiny force would grow inside her like a seed, and one day it would become a towering tree. She took a breath, steadied herself, and looked up at Safina. Teacher, I'm ready. All right, then let's. Boom. Before Safina could finish her sentence, the entire palace of time trembled violently. A deep explosion echoed from the distance. Everyone in the palace turned toward the sound. They saw the already darkened sky lit up by a bizarre violet glow, like a twisted purgatory. And then an even more shocking scene followed. The entire Silver Dragon sanctuary was cleaved in half by a colossal blade of energy. Tiles shattered, stone crumbled, thick dust rose into the air. From within the smoke, several dragons shot out. Among them were Vita and Cecilia. On the backs of the injured dragons lay the heavily wounded Noah, Moon, and Muse, just barely conscious. Rosvisser's pupils narrowed into slits. Otto's has broken through the line. Everyone, we need to hurry. With her words, the Dragon Kings immediately began channeling magic into Safina. Safina activated the mirror abyss eyes at once. Her violet irises reflected Aurora's figure. Dots of light shimmered on the surface of her pupils like a rose blooming in reverse. Void technique, mirror abyss eyes mimicry. At that moment, two sharp sounds of something piercing through the air came from beyond the palace. Whoosh, whoosh. Thunderblade and Nightbane slammed into the ground, outside the palace gate at the same time, burying themselves in the stone. The next second, a dark shadow descended from the sky. It landed hard, kicking up a cloud of dust. When the dust settled, Otto stood there, one foot crushing Kaiser, one hand gripping Leon by the collar. Kaiser's face was covered in blood. He'd clearly taken a brutal beating. Even Leon was badly wounded. Everyone in the palace was struck with a wave of dread unlike anything they had ever felt. Leon. Kaiser. Even the prince couldn't stop him. Otto's crimson eyes slowly scanned across the palace, locking finally onto Aurora and Safina. He kicked Kaiser aside, flung Leon away, then dragged his demon sword behind him as he approached the palace. Now I just need to kill the other traitor, and this little pink-haired girl. Odin's brow furrowed deeply. Prepare for battle. With his command, Mevis and the other dragon kings rushed to the palace entrance, ready to block Otto's. But Otto's only let out a cold snort. HMPH, even Leon Kazmod was no match for me. What can the rest of you do? He swung his sword. The raw pressure from the slash alone was enough to paralyze the dragon kings with fear. Morgan's eye twitched. This is insane. Leon was fighting this kind of monster just now, and he managed to hold him off this long. The Tower Master clenched his jaw. Every one of us here is at least Dragon King level, and yet the sheer pressure from him alone makes us hesitate. It's just too terrifying. To be able to surpass even the usual boundaries of Dragon King class, Divine Master class, Super Dragon King class. Even Leon couldn't do that in his prime. But Otto's had done it. And that was after a battle against both Leon and Kaiser together. Which meant for him that fight just now was nothing more than a warm-up. Inside the palace, Aurora stared at the scene unfolding before her. She looked at the teacher shielding her aunt, Mevis, and the other dragon kings, then at her teacher, injured and lying in Otto's grasp. After a long moment of silence, she spoke. Teacher Safina, thank you for trying to help me, Teacher Safina. She was about to tell Safina there was no time, that she had to take the throne now and end this. But then she noticed. Safina had already begun reconstructing the form of the god of time using her own power, without the aid of the Dragon King's magic. But how could a divine form possibly be something a void technique could imitate so easily? The moment she started the mimicry, Safina's eyes were seared with a burning pain. Teacher Safina. Aurora rushed to catch her, but just then, the entire palace of time trembled again. She stumbled and fell to the floor, glancing back toward the entrance. Her mother and the others had already been swept away by Otto's in a single blow. They hadn't even had the chance to fight back. Thud! Otto stepped easily into the palace. The twisted, murderous aura emanating from his body seeped through every corner of the space. Aurora knew if she didn't move, everyone would die. Run, Aurora, run. Rosvisser coughed blood at the corners of her lips, but still forced herself to shout, urging her daughter to flee. Mom, no. In the brief moment of panic and clarity, Aurora scrambled to her feet and, without looking back, sprinted toward the throne at the far end of the hourglass. This was the only solution. Only if she took the throne could everything be saved. She ran with everything she had, the moisture beneath her feet dissolving into the webs of time with every step. The throne of time was right in front of her. So close, one more step and she'd reach it, but the moment her foot landed, she felt an icy chill from behind. Her collar was yanked up, and her whole body was lifted into the air. Aurora turned, eyes blazing with fury, staring straight at Otto's, and hurled a blast of dragonfire at him. But to Otto's, that level of attack didn't even qualify as an itch. (802). Vol 6, Chapter 165.2, The 5 Divine Spirits 2. How amusing! You were this close to saving the world, O mighty god of time. Ha 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 ha. Otto's burst into wild laughter, then raised his demonic sword, the tip aimed straight at Aurora's brow. Well then, O great divine girl, now you can die. In her pink eyes, the terrifyingly close blade reflected crystal clear. Aurora shut her eyes, quietly awaiting death. The sound of a blade piercing flesh echoed, sharp, unmistakable. Aurora slowly opened her eyes, only to widen them in disbelief. Dad. That man, his entire body battered and broken, still stood before his daughter, taking the fatal blow for her. Leon gripped the demonic sword with both hands, its edge slicing deep into his palm. Blood gushed between his fingers. In that moment, he erupted with staggering power. Lightning magic surged and exploded, blasting Otto's straight out of the palace. And Leon didn't stop, not even to catch his breath. Go, keep following your sister's plan. Kaiser also pushed himself up, calling out to the Dragon Kings. Leon and I will buy you all the time you need. Kaiser, why? Why are you and Teacher Safina so determined to? Aurora, stand still, don't move. The Dragon Kings, wounded and staggering, continued channeling magic into Safina. She too reignited the mirror abyss eyes and resumed the mimicry. Outside the palace, Otto's once again clashed with Leon and Kaiser. He sounded irritated now. Why won't you two die already? Kaiser fixed his eyes on his nearly useless right arm and growled. For my sister, for all of the void, I absolutely won't let you pass. Kaiser, you. This has changed Otto's. Leon ignored the blood pouring from his right hand and began gathering lightning magic into his palm once again. You just now tried to kill my daughter, didn't you? I'm going to kill you. This has nothing to do with Samuel or the void anymore. Even if all I have left is my mouth, I'll bite through your fucking throat, you bastard. A flicker of surprise crossed Otto's eyes, but it vanished quickly. He sneered. You two, you're neither gods nor inheritors. What makes you think you can kill me? Utterly laughable. With that, Otto's finally lost his patience and charged forward, sword raised. Leon and Kaiser threw everything they had into stopping him. But they were far too exhausted. Neither of them could match Otto's now. Otto's kicked Kaiser flying first, then grabbed Leon by the throat and hurled him hard into a massive tree. Seems I won't be able to enjoy being the last god until I thoroughly kill you both. He turned and walked toward Leon. Let's start with you. The demonic sword glowed a deep, eerie violet. Otto's raised it high overhead with both hands and brought it down with force. The sword's energy screamed through the air toward Leon. Just as it was about to strike, a massive silver form dropped from the sky, throwing everything it had into blocking the blow. But that same strike also forced the silver dragon back into humanoid form. Vita-senpai. Leon cried out, trying to run to him, but the searing pain throughout his body kept him from moving. Leon, did you hear what he just said? Vita's voice was weak. What? Divine power. Only divine power can defeat him. Zahi. Before Vita could finish, Otto slashed him aside with one swing. Nosy old fool. Otto's looked back at Leon, slowly raising his sword again. No matter, dead is dead. What cat got your tongue? Leon was on one knee, eyes locked tightly on his hands. Otto's followed his gaze and saw the 5 spirit thunder cores. Leon, dragging his battered body, slowly stood up, gripping the 4 cores tightly in both hands. Vita had passed them to him earlier and reminded him. Only divine power could fight Otto's. What's this? You really think a few broken stones are enough to beat me? Otto's remained supremely confident. The 5 spirit crown is long gone. These thunder cores can't unleash their true power. Give up your delusions. After a brief silence, Leon spoke softly. No, you're wrong. What? Do you know what power Zeus used to create the crown in the first place? Lightning magic. With that, Leon laid the 4 thunder cores out before him. The crystals floated in front of him, each glowing with a distinct elemental light. From within his drained and broken body, Leon squeezed out the last of his mana. Electricity surged through him. Lightning arcs flared as currents coiled around his body. The arcs linked the 4 thunder cores, connecting their power. Leon's feet slowly lifted off the ground, floating upward. Otto's, sensing danger, raised his sword to attack. But Kaiser suddenly lunged from behind, wrapping his arms tightly around Otto's waist. Damn you, you bastard. Boom. A bolt of lightning split the clouds with a thunderous crash as it struck down from the heavens. The thunder echoed across the land, as though heralding the return of a sovereign power. Boom, 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 boom. The clouds churned, lightning writhed in chaos, rain poured in torrents. The elements surged violently, as if they were welcoming something. The 4 thunder spirit cores slowly vanished before Leon's eyes, fusing into the lightning that surged around him. He opened his arms, eyes half closed, quietly feeling the influx of this new power. But in the very next moment, the power went berserk inside him. It rampaged violently through his body, threatening to tear him apart. Gah! Leon groaned through clenched teeth. Something deep in his chest felt like it was going to explode. The pain was unbearable. Otto, seeing this, relaxed his tightly furrowed brow and flung Kaiser aside. He pointed toward Leon, still floating in midair. You see that man? Kaiser, not everyone can wield absolute power. In 5 seconds or less, your dear comrade will explode before your very eyes. Kaiser collapsed to the ground, stunned, staring at the struggling Leon overhead. How could this happen? Vita and Cecilia also took in the entire scene. Noah, perched on a dragon's back, saw her father writhing in agony and immediately tried to run toward him. But the moment she moved, she stumbled forward, nearly collapsing. Luckily, Moon and Muse caught her in time. Big sis. I have to help him, he can't take it anymore. The thunder cores are too strong, Dad can't handle it alone. Noah, you're not going anywhere. Cecilia shouted sharply. But Dad. Alargus. Leon's cry of agony tore through the rain and echoed across the mountainside. Inside the palace, Rosvisser also heard the voice. That's Leon, something's wrong with Leon. Her silver eyes trembled. She withdrew her dragon power and staggered toward the palace gates. She looked in the direction of the voice. Leon. The downpour felt like some kind of barrier, isolating any sound from reaching Leon's ears. All he could feel was his soul and body being torn apart by countless overwhelming forces. He thought maybe this time he really had overestimated himself. Not every battle could be won through sheer effort or by gambling with one's life. In his despair, he seemed to glimpse Rosvisser through the curtain of rain, running toward him. If someone asked Leon what he regretted most in his life, he might take a while to answer, or never find one. But if asked what he never regretted, it would undoubtedly be loving Rosvisser Melkve. How lucky. In the midst of being torn apart, he slowly closed his eyes. And for my last sight, it's you. In a haze, Leon seemed to arrive at some unfamiliar space. He looked around. It was a lonely street drenched in a torrential downpour. This is Leon. Someone called him. He turned. A beautiful, refined woman stood before him, elegant and striking. He recognized her at N-A-V-Y-L Cyrillic letter 456 GHT. Don't copy, read here, once. Hera. Her voice was rich and magnetic. You're awake? Leon nodded in surprise. Yeah, Hera, this is my consciousness. That's right, she replied softly. This is your inner space. Inner space? Leon recalled Noah once telling him the ancestors could reside within one's spiritual consciousness. Hera stepped forward slowly. Rain soaked her hair and long gown, but it couldn't hide her transcendent grace and beauty. She stopped before Leon. It was his first time seeing his creator so close. Did you defeat Otto's? Hera asked softly. Leon's shoulders trembled. He gave a self-deprecating laugh and shook his head. No, I failed, I let you down. I'm sorry, Hera. Failure means death, she said. A chill ran down Leon's spine. So, this is death. I always thought dying would hurt more. He paused, then suddenly understood. So I'm here because I'm already dead. Are you here to welcome me? Hera said nothing. After a moment, Leon shrugged. All right, got it. He took a few steps forward, walking toward whatever lay behind her. He didn't know what waited beyond, but something called to him. Maybe the end, maybe something else. But just as he passed her, Hera suddenly raised her hand and pressed it lightly against his chest. Stay here for now. What? She looked into his eyes. In those ocean blue irises was a gleam of hope and expectation. Wake up, go feel Zeus's divine power again. Remember, you are the child of thunder, a one-of-a-kind existence in this world. I gave my life to protect you for this very moment. Leon stared at her in a daze. In those brief seconds, he seemed to feel the 1,000-year-long wish she had carried. His senses slowly returned. The thunder, the rain, Rosvisser's cries. Hera's figure began to blur before him. The next instant, Leon was violently ejected from his inner space. When he came to, he was back. Back in that same moment. And the power tearing through him was gradually calming down. This is impossible. Otto stared at Leon, for the first time showing a trace of panic. He actually absorbed the power of the thunder cores. Not just that. Who's there? Otto's followed the voice. It was Vita, who had just been struck down. Holding his broken arm, Vita slowly rose and looked up at Leon. The 5-spirit crown was born from thunder itself. It was a cradle of power. Now, Leon has gathered the cores again and fused them with his own thunder magic. You understand now, don't you, Otto's? He is the second vessel chosen to bear the power of the cores. You may have destroyed the crown, but you can't destroy Leon Kazmod. Otto's gritted his teeth and clenched his sword hilt. No, this can't be happening. Another thunderclap roared across the sky, cutting off his frantic scream. He turned back. Everyone's gaze had locked on the figure, now cloaked in lightning and electricity. Arms spread, Leon slowly emerged from the chaotic maelstrom of elemental energy. A bolt of lightning traced the scar on his face. The blue afterimage of divine light flowed back into his body. On this night, it wasn't only the god of time who was born, but also the god of element. Thunder King of Ruin, holy shadow of the 5 spirits. (803). Vol 6, Chapter 166, Stats and Mechanisms. Hi Jonathan87. Thank you for your warm activity in the comments. It truly means a lot and is very inspiring. As a token of my appreciation, I'd like to gift you 100 coupons from me. Stay with us going forward, winking face. Divine breath surged, heaven and earth changed color. Ottos stared in disbelief at Leon, who had just been reborn in the heart of thunder and flame. His eyes were filled with shock and awe. For a brief moment, he thought he saw a familiar figure in Leon's form. Zeus. He narrowed his eyes, then shook his head. No, you're not Zeus. You can't possess his power. Stop bluffing with these tricks, primitive of Samuel. Leon slowly opened his eyes. A flicker of lightning danced across his black irises as he gazed calmly at Ottos, silently gathering power. Whether it's a bluff or not, you'll find out soon enough. You bastard, I'll finish you for good right now. What? Before Ottos could finish speaking, Leon had already appeared right in front of him. The speed he displayed was on a completely different level than just moments ago. A few milliseconds after Leon appeared, the shockwave caused by his movement belatedly caught up, sweeping past Ottos with violent force and forcing him back a half step. Stunned, Ottos roared and raised his demonic sword to slash at Leon. But Leon didn't move, not a single step, not even to raise his hand and block. To Ottos, this was the ultimate insult, arrogance in its purest form. Fueled by rage, Ottos poured even more void energy into his sword. The grotesque Novelight eye embedded in the hilt twitched violently. Don't be overconfident. As the sword slashed down, it carved a sinister arc of purple flame through the air, aiming directly for Leon's neck. Buzz! A sharp resonance echoed out as the blade came to a dead stop, less than 5 centimeters from Leon's skin. Ottos's eyes widened. Both his hands gripped the hilt tightly. He could feel it. Something had intercepted the blow. But between the sword and Leon, there was nothing. And no matter how hard he pushed, the sword wouldn't move an inch closer. It was like an invisible, overwhelming force had locked it in place. What the hell is this? Even if he didn't understand the nature of that force, the fact that it could casually stop a full-powered blow from Ottos was enough to shatter the Void Lord's pride. Leon narrowed his eyes and looked calmly at the halted blade, then met Ottos's gaze. That's all you've got. Ottos grit his teeth and growled, swinging again at Leon's throat. But the result was the same. This time, however, he saw it clearly. It wasn't some mysterious invisible power. It was wind. Pure wind element energy had formed an almost imperceptible protective layer around Leon. And its strength far surpassed that of any mere wind spirit core. So you figured it out, Leon said. Then there's no point hiding it anymore. Ottos's fury exploded. You son of a bitch, you were mocking me. Do you even know who you're talking to? I do. Leon raised his hand slowly, voice still calm. I'm talking to someone who's about to lose to me. You. Buzz. Another sharp hum. Leon merely flicked his fingers, and a surge of wind element energy blasted Ottos's sword from his hands. The weapon spun through the air before embedding itself in the ground nearby. Ottos glanced at where it landed. That tiny distraction was all Leon needed. He struck. Before Ottos could react, an intense heat wave slammed into him. He instinctively leapt back, trying to create distance, and conjured a barrier with void energy, both arms raised, palms outward. He molded the energy into a blazing elemental shield. The flames crashed into the barrier. Though the shield's surface wasn't very wide, flames spilled over its edges, but none struck Ottos directly. Seeing this, Ottos smirked. I thought you were going to show me something strong. Fire, what is this, a child's trick? Then try this one. Leon spoke softly and infused a second force into the fire. Ottos instantly felt the change. The flames surged with renewed ferocity. Crack, crack. Fissures split across the previously indestructible void barrier. Wind fuels fire, let's see you block this, Autos. As the words fell, the wind-fueled inferno blasted straight through the weakened barrier. And Autos vanished in the blaze. But it didn't stop there. Leon's strike kept burning through the battlefield behind Autos, piercing through void creatures, boulders, mountains. Even the relentless rainfall evaporated instantly, forming a surreal corridor of dry silence within the storm. Finally, the fire carved into a mountainside, gouging out a gap over 100 meters wide before slowly fading. The rain returned, and before Leon was a charred trail stretching for kilometers. He looked down at his hands, murmuring, "So this is the power of the elemental god." Iga. A weak groan came from the scorched earth. Leon looked toward the voice. Autos, now blackened and charred, was slowly struggling to rise. Chunks of burned skin fell away. He hadn't been reduced to cinders only because the physiology of Voidkin and Samalians was so different. You think that's enough to kill me." The sound came ragged from his scorched throat. Leon wasn't surprised Autos was still standing. He replied softly, "I didn't expect that to kill you, which is why." He raised his arms again, and a glowing blue skeletal frame wrapped around his body, 2 more limbs extended from his back. "I've prepared something even stronger." In each of his real hands, Leon summoned fire and wind. While the skeletal arms began gathering energy, earth and water danced at their fingertips. Far in the distance, Noah stared in awe. "Dad, he's controlling 4 elemental powers at the same time. This is power of Zeus." Across the continent of Samil, even dual-element awakeners were rare. Few ever mastered more than 1 or 2 elements after birth. But here and now, Leon had fully integrated 3, 4 spirit cores. Without casting spells, without external catalysts, he commanded them freely. Before, he relied solely on lightning. Now, he had added asterisk elemental damage modifiers on top of that. Overloaded stats, overloaded mechanics. Noah couldn't even imagine how miserable Autos was about to be. Back on the battlefield, Leon gave Autos no time to breathe. He struck in the very first second of their clash, unleashing all 4 elements. The earth beneath surged, asterisk spikes of rock burst from below. Autos tried to dodge, too late. SHHK, SHHK, SHHK. Stone spears rose from every direction, pinning him in place. He bent one knee, trying to crush the spikes with void energy, but water chains lashed out, binding both his arms. Damn it! Then came the asterisk fire and wind combo, now familiar and even more brutal. Under the searing wind and blazing flames, Autos screamed in anguish. Smoke and ash settled. Autos remained impaled on the stone spears, motionless. And yet, he still sneered at Leon. "That's it, ha, even with power of Zeus, this is your limit." Thick, blackened blood dripped from all 7 of his orifices. His body looked one tap away from shattering. The wind stirred Leon's hair. His expression remained calm, undisturbed. Maybe it was the divine power, or maybe he had touched the realm of gods. No matter how Autos provoked him, Leon's heart remained still. Of course, that's not all. Leon rose slowly into the air, his right hand rotating palm up. From it, blue lightning crackled. "Also, I have a question." He said it so casually that it made Autos hesitate. "Does Void suck at math?" "What?" "You've only been hit by 4 elements so far, but I still have 1 more." Leon clenched his right hand and hurled the thunder element force into the clouds. A moment later, a deafening asterisk crack of thunder tore open the sky. Lightning devoured the heavens, thunder rolled across the land. It was as if doomsday had arrived. The sky collapsed, the world quaked. Storm winds whipped torrential rain into chaos. Bolts rained down endlessly. Autos, with all his strength, raised his head to look at the figure in the sky. Leon had gathered all 5 elements. And then, a roar shattered the heavens. A asterisk thunder lion emerged from the clouds, formed of pure lightning. It descended. Around it, earth, water, wind, and fire spiraled in harmony. "I know no attack can kill a void symbiote like you, Autos, but eternal life comes with a curse. You're about to experience something worse than death." As he finished speaking, Leon swung his arm down and passed divine judgment. The thunder lion roared, its cry echoed across the world. Divine art obliterate, heaven's thunder judgment. (804). Vol 6, Chapter 167, Undying Body and Infinite Power. The thunderlight faded from the wrecked battlefield. Leon slowly stepped forward, flicking off the lingering arcs of lightning from his hand. Kaiser came up beside him, standing shoulder to shoulder as they stared ahead at the empty field. Neither of them showed much expression. Though just moments ago Kaiser had been shaken by Leon stepping into the realm of the divine, now that he'd steadied himself, he knew even an attack of that apocalyptic scale wouldn't be enough to deal fatal damage to Otto's. As the dust cleared, Otto's staggered up from the deep crater, dragging his ravaged body. He hunched his back, raising his right hand high into the air. The cursed sword, which had been knocked away by Kaiser's lightning, seemed to sense Otto's call. Across nearly 10 meters, it turned into a streak of violet light, slashed through the sky, and landed perfectly into his grasp. "I thought you'd at least show some surprise," Kaiser said quietly. Leon shook his head and replied in a low voice, "I've always had a long-standing standard for judging whether I've actually won a battle." The battlefield was tense and solemn, but Kaiser didn't mind taking a few extra seconds to hear this standard Leon spoke of. So he asked, "And what is that?" Leon inhaled deeply, then slowly exhaled, his gaze fixed on Otto's, who was rapidly healing. If your enemy is truly about to lose to you, then they'll definitely start spouting all kinds of threats, trying to show their resentment and unwillingness to accept defeat. As he spoke, Leon resumed his fighting stance. But what Otto's just showed was merely disbelief that I could wield divine power, nothing beyond that. And I think the state he's in right now, this miserable, broken look, he did that on purpose. Kaiser raised a brow at that. On purpose, why do you think that? He wanted to test what divine power could actually do to him. Leon gathered fire and wind elements in both hands. Now that his little test is over, the real fight begins, to the death. And just as Leon suspected, Otto's body was quickly restored. He rolled his neck, joints cracking loudly. Then he opened his eyes and looked straight at Leon. "Too bad you inherited Zeus's divine power. A god of battle and slaughter, sure, far superior to those third-rate gods of wisdom and light. But that's all it is. I won't let you take this world from my hands, Leon Kazmod. I'd rather destroy it myself." With that, Otto's gripped his sword with both hands and suddenly plunged it into the ground. Seeing this, Leon's brow furrowed. What's he doing now? A flicker of unease crossed Kaiser's eyes, but he forced himself to remain calm. "Remember when I told you that Otto's has already fused with the void?" "I remember. That's what makes him immortal. Why?" "Immortality is only one of the powers he gained from that fusion." Kaiser clenched his fists. For the first time, a ripple of tension surfaced in his steady tone. The void realm doesn't just let him regenerate again and again. It also grants him virtually limitless energy. Leon blinked in surprise. "So what you're saying is, our opponent isn't just unkillable, he doesn't even get tired." "Exactly, you can't kill him, you can't outlast him." In simple terms, yes. Kaiser also readied himself for battle again. "When you visited the Time Palace just now, you must have seen what my sister was planning, right?" Leon nodded. "Yeah. Exactly. That ancient mechanism had only just begun activating, and her goal, without a doubt, was to replicate Aurora. Combined with the notes Leon had read in Safina's private library, it wasn't hard to guess. She intended to use the Dragon King's power to let the mirror abyss eyes replicate divine status. Then she'd take Aurora's place on the throne. No wonder those siblings hadn't planned to tell Leon about it from the start. If they had, Leon definitely would have been distracted, maybe even caught in a far more difficult dilemma. And the plan's next step is, once the new god of time is born, Safina will have enough divine power to suppress the void again. Kaiser explained, "So we have to push Otto's back to the far side of the void rift the moment my sister ascends. Force him back into the void and seal the gate once and for all. Only then can we call it a true victory." The conditions for victory were now painfully clear, and just as painful in their difficulty. Still, it was better than the impossible choice they'd faced at the beginning. Leon nodded. Got it. Done discussing. Otto's hoarse voice rang out from a distance. If you're done, then prepare to die. The moment he spoke, he let out a low growl. Violet light surged from his body. In an instant, multiple void rifts tore open beside him. But this time, what poured out was void soldiers or monsters. It was wisps of dark violet spiritual energy. These energies fused into Otto's cursed sword, making it flicker with an ominous glow. The eye embedded in the hilt began trembling violently, its whites bloodshot with crimson veins. He's drawing power from the void realm, Kaiser muttered. He summoned Night Abyss and held it ready. Don't forget what he said. Even if it means destroying Samuel temporarily, he'll take it. He wasn't joking. We're facing a monster who's undying, unbound by this world, and constantly recharging. The only way to stop him is to push him out of this world. Leon gathered elemental power and replied softly, All right, let's go. Yeah. The moment the words fell, the two of them vanished. The next instant, Leon appeared in front of Otto's. The powers of thunder and flame fused into a long blade, and he slashed down toward Otto's face. Otto's raised his sword to block. The clash of elemental forces sent shockwaves and dust exploding outward. Leon seized the chance, launched a fierce knee to Otto's gut, then followed up with a wind-charged blow. Otto's body was hurled into the air. Leon kicked off the ground and chased after him. Though tilde N, AV yeah L letter 1D55A GHT, tilde he still couldn't fly outright. He could now maneuver midair using wind elements, an effective compensation for his lack of spatial abilities. Hathy. Otto's let out a deep laugh. Interesting. With a roar, he unleashed void energy. The cursed sword surged forward, firing a dark beam straight at Leon. Demonic art annihilating evil ray, ghost whale. This was originally a wide area wipeout technique. Otto's had used it to slaughter thousands of void creatures and hundreds of Silver Dragon warriors when he first arrived in Samuel. And now, that life-ending energy was concentrated into a single beam. Worse still, because it came from such a high angle, even if Leon dodged it, the beam would hit the ground directly. In that case, the entire Silver Dragon territory would be engulfed in fire within seconds. Otto's grinned wickedly. Leon, unlike me, you don't have an immortal body. You'd better dodge. Oh right, if you do dodge, everyone down there dies. Leon flew straight toward the annihilating evil ray. He knew exactly how dangerous it was. Dodging it was definitely possible. He gritted his teeth, activated the wind element skeleton to shield himself, and reinforced his defense with earth element. Even so, Leon wasn't sure if he could actually withstand the evil ray. And even if he could, would he have enough strength left to keep fighting? Leon, charge forward, I'll block it for you. As if answering him, a violet figure shot past from the side, rushing straight into the evil ray. Kaiser met the destructive beam head-on, bracing Night Abyss horizontally to absorb the monstrous impact. Leon, don't freeze up, Kaiser shouted. Leon snapped back into focus. Now was the moment to strike. Kaiser had opened the path, Leon couldn't waste it. He surged forward with wind element speed too fast for the eye to follow, flanking Otto's. Oh, not bad, you two actually know how to coordinate. Shut up. They clashed at close range. Leon had realized, if they kept exchanging ranged, high-explosive spells, then it wouldn't matter who broke first. The whole region, and everyone in it, would be obliterated. So Leon forced Otto's into melee combat. Only that way could he minimize the battle's collateral damage. But Leon had underestimated the power of the five-spirit divine shadow, and how serious Otto's had been when he said, even if I have to destroy Samuel temporarily. Boom, boom. The two of them traded punch after punch. Their physical collisions alone unleashed shockwaves and sonic booms across the sky. After several rounds, Otto's caught Leon's wrist, twisted, and hurled him toward a distant mountain. Leon's body crashed down like a cannonball, slamming deep into the mountain range. But it didn't stop there. Otto's unleashed multiple void sword slashes, each strike tearing into the peak, crumbling the mountain instantly. Stone, trees, dirt, everything collapsed on top of Leon. A mountain's weight, plus several sword blasts, buried him. Otto's hovered in midair, watching the ruins cave in with a grin. "I know you're not dead. Come on out, let's keep fighting." Just as he finished speaking, a flash of blue shot up from the rubble. Leon burst skyward without a word, launching straight into the second round of hand-to-hand combat. He conjured another Thunderfire longsword, and with even greater speed than before, charged at Otto's. Divine Art 9 Hells 4 Gates Reforged, Godspeed Slash. With the 5-spirit Divine Shadow augmenting it, the 4th gate, Godspeed, was even stronger now. A lightning fire slash, combined with absurd velocity, produced power far beyond even knight armor. WHRRRRN. The two blades clashed, a sharp hum reverberating through the night sky. Leon gripped the hilt tightly, but unfortunately, he still lacked the ability to summon from afar, so he hadn't yet reclaimed his Thundercloud blade. He could only fight using weapons formed from elemental power. If he had the Thundercloud blade in hand, he wouldn't be struggling this much. "Hiya!" Leon shouted, pushing more elemental energy into his strike. A massive sword beam, nearly 100 meters long, sliced across the sky, lighting up the dark violet clouds. Divine Art, Fire Thunder God. Otto's was blasted back by the impact. He stopped about 100 meters away, but the moment he did, the sword beam exploded. Even high above the ground, the explosion's shockwave took a few seconds to hit the surface. Dozens of trees were uprooted. Silver Dragon soldiers on the battlefield were blown away. The entire field plunged into deeper chaos. But when the smoke cleared, Otto's was still floating steadily in place. The void energy had boosted him again. He was now stronger than before. "You can't beat me, and I can't kill you quickly either." Otto's spoke calmly. "Let's see who lasts longer. Will it be your half-baked divine powers, or the full might of the entire void realm?" "Half-baked?" Leon frowned at those words. Otto's had noticed. The 5-spirit divine shadow had a time limit, or a power limit. Seeing Leon's expression, Otto's let out a mocking chuckle. "What? Don't tell me you thought I wouldn't notice. When you first got the pseudo-divine powers, you hit me with all 5 elements like a madman. But for the past few minutes, you haven't used earth or water. And now, the fire in your elemental blade is flickering. My guess, in a little while, even the wind keeping you airborne will vanish. And when that happens, you'll lose your pseudo-divine state completely." Otto's had thousands of years of battle experience, an ancient monster. He raised his cursed sword and prepared to attack again. "But in the end, you're still just mimicking a god. That said, I'm glad to have such a strong opponent. So then, let's continue." Leon clenched his fists and glanced down at the Time Palace. "You have to hurry, Safina." "805. Vol 6, Chapter 168, Forever Etched in Memory." Rossvisser returned to the Time Palace and gave a quick update on the battle outside. After hearing it, Odin froze briefly. A flicker of hope passed through his ancient dragon eyes. To think the prince can already wield divine power. But judging from the battle's intensity, Leon probably won't be able to maintain that state for long. Rossvisser quickly spoke up. "We need to hurry and help Safina complete the replication of the Mirror Abyss Eye." "Understood." The Dragon Kings turned to Safina. She steadied herself and nodded. "I'm ready." With that, she turned to look at Aurora. Otto's had nearly hurt her when he broke in earlier. Safina was still somewhat shaken. But Aurora forced herself to stabilize and spoke firmly. "I'm ready too, Teacher Safina." "Good." With everyone prepared, the Dragon Kings slowly channeled their magic into Safina. Safina also activated the Mirror Abyss Eye and began replicating Aurora's divine state. But the process turned out to be far more difficult than Safina had anticipated. She had just attempted to copy the Time God's form in the true Apocalypse realm using only her own power. And less than a second into it, her eyes felt as though they were burning alive. She had hoped that with the Dragon King's support, the side effects would be gentler. But the burning pain never faded. Safina clenched her teeth, enduring the agony. While replicating the time god's essence, she simultaneously converted the Dragon Kings, magic into the void energy needed to fuel the mirror abyssi. But barely 10 seconds in, her strength gave out and she collapsed to one knee. She gripped her leg, gasping for breath. Her eyes remained tightly shut. She could hardly see anything anymore. "Teacher Safina, are you all right?" Aurora rushed to her side in a panic. Safina shook her head weakly. "I'm fine, let's keep going, Aurora." She forced herself to her feet, though her body wavered. The moment she stood, the blood drained from her brain, everything spun, and she nearly collapsed backward. Fortunately, Rosvisser caught her just in time. "Are you really okay, Safina? Maybe we should find more helpers to provide magic support," Rosvisser suggested. "There's no time." Safina adjusted herself slightly, her tone faint and strained. As they spoke, the entire palace trembled twice, no doubt the result of Leon and Otto's battle outside. Danger was at their doorstep. As Safina said, there was no time to seek other reinforcements. I'm fine, let's continue." Her face was deathly pale, her eyes bloodshot. Everyone present could see Safina's body was never meant to endure the time god's form. No one could predict what would happen if she kept going. But there was no turning back. All they could do now was commit fully to Safina's plan. The magic transfer resumed. Several strands of star-like magical threads shimmered around Safina. She activated the mirror abyssi once more. This time, she had fully prepared herself mentally. The burning pain returned instantly, flaring from her optic nerves, spreading to her brain as if her whole skull were being charred to cinders. Her body trembled slightly, even standing upright was a struggle. One arm hung limp at her side, her chest and back heaved violently. Seeing this, even Odin and the others who'd once distrusted her couldn't help but murmur in awe. To think that the one fighting tooth and nail to save the prince's family, and Samuel itself, is truly a warrior from the void. The Tower Master also sighed, to sacrifice one's own life and gamble on the future of another world through sheer will. If it were me, I doubt I'd have the resolve. To earn Sir Leon's absolute trust, both she and that void warrior, Kaiser, must be people of extraordinary fate, said Mevis softly. Isha channeled her magic while quietly watching Safina's trembling, slender back. After a moment, she asked softly, "What exactly did she and Kaiser go through? What changed in their hearts? What did my brother-in-law do that made them willing to give up everything for us?" Rosvisser's silver eyes wavered slightly. After a long silence, she pursed her lips and said, "Leon gave them a chance to crawl out of the abyss. And in turn, they're using that chance to redeem themselves for everything they once did." Sis, she didn't give up everything, she let it go. To give up meant to abandon, to surrender, to be powerless. But to let go was the awakening and transcendence of the soul. A peaceful life and a carefree future had once been well within the Safina siblings' grasp, but they chose to let it go, to face this uncertain fate instead. Leon, through his actions and words, had changed Safina and Kaiser. He helped them rediscover a reason to live. And that reason was this moment, this determination, this redemption. Thump! Safina dropped to her knees. She clutched her left eye. Blood leaked between her fingers, dripping onto the hourglass beneath her feet. One of her eyes could no longer hold on, its surface cracked open. Agonizing pain screamed through her nerves. "Teacher." "Safina sis, Odin-senpai, we have to stop." "No, don't stop, we can't, we must not stop." Safina turned back, staring at the Dragon Kings with her one remaining eye. "Even if it costs me my life, I won't stop. I won't let all my effort be wasted. I won't let Otto's schemes succeed. Please." Isha clenched her fists, "But you've already lost one eye." "I still have the other one." Safina gritted her teeth, trembling from the pain as she forced herself upright again. "Come on, let's continue." Her lone mirror abyss eye shimmered with a solitary light. The once brilliant and intricate patterns had now been stained dark red with blood. Luckily, she could still feel it. The time god's power was slowly beginning to manifest within her. She dragged her heavy body forward, stepping atop the hourglass beneath her feet, moving slowly toward the time throne. Aurora and the Dragon Kings watched her back, breath held, not making a sound. And yet, Safina could still faintly hear the trembling in that child's breath. She stopped in the center of the hourglass, and with her back to Aurora, spoke slowly. Listen, Aurora, I want you to remember this. Never forget what happened today. You made your choice. You were brave. You did right by Leon, by the Silver Dragon King, by Noah and your sisters, and by Kronos' expectations. But I want to see a better you. Do you understand? You have a future far more brilliant than mine. Aurora. Tears spilled from Aurora's pink eyes. Teacher Safina. Don't cry, little one. Her voice grew faint. I can't stand seeing kids cry. She kept walking, but her body had been pushed far past its limit. And with the time God's form nearly manifest, she didn't know if she'd make it to the throne before her body and spirit gave out. If she did, great. If not, then it had all been for nothing. Her vision dimmed. The world around her turned black. She could hear her own heartbeat racing faster and faster. She bit her lip hard. Is this the end? A mortal body could not bear the weight of a god. Safina collapsed again, arms limp at her sides. Her sealed left eye continued to bleed. Through the haze, she heard Aurora, Rosvisser, and Isha calling her name, but she no longer had the strength to respond. Maybe this really was the end. Nah, are you okay? Just before losing consciousness completely, Safina thought she heard a familiar voice. She desperately raised her head, searching for the source. Look at you, Nah. What a mess you've made of yourself. You even ruined your eye. Whether it was an illusion or a final hallucination, standing before her was. Anita, is that you, Anita? It's me, Nah. Long time no see. The girl in the white dress stood quietly before the throne, smiling down at her. That smile, as warm as sunlight. Ever since hearing of Anita's death, Safina had seen that smile countless times in her dreams. But when she woke, there was always only darkness. Anita, you're alive, you're alive. No, Nah, I've already left. I'm far, far away now. But you're standing right in front of me, aren't you? I'm not really here, Nah. I'm in your memory. Anita's voice was soft and gentle. The day our memories begin to fade, the day I disappear from your heart, that's the day you'll forget my face, my voice, and everything we shared. And you'll never see me again. I don't want that. Safina's remaining eye blinked rapidly, tears welling. She cried out desperately. Then tell me what to do. What do I have to do to keep you in my memory forever? Tell me, Anita. Anita slowly stepped aside, revealing the time throne behind her. Become the god of time, freeze everything in this moment. Safina's breathing quickened. She stared at the empty throne and whispered, I can't. Anita, I'm dying. You can. That beautiful apparition walked forward, bent down, and held Safina in a gentle embrace. Though barely alive, she could still feel warmth. Anita rested her forehead against Safina's, wiping the blood from her cheeks. I believe in you because, you're Safina, you're my best friend. The warmth vanished. Safina jolted like she'd awakened from a nightmare. As the voices of the others called to her, she stood again. The mirror abyss eye in her right eye burst into brilliant, unmatched light, and within the bronze mirror, the figure of her long-lost friend seemed to shimmer. I won't forget you, Anita. Safina took a step forward. Her body was already broken from the pain, but she would not give up now. Step by step, she moved toward the throne. At last, Safina stood before the seat of time. She looked down upon the throne. Countless threads of the time net spun around her. In that moment, her friend's figure was carved forever into her memory. She smiled, turned, and slowly sat down. Thus, the continent of Samuel welcomed its second god of time, Safina. (806). Vol 6, Chapter 169, Go Back to Your World. At the very moment of her ascension, a golden ripple burst outward from Safina's body, spreading across the time palace. As the ripple swept past the Dragon Kings inside, the wounds Ottos had inflicted on them just moments ago healed at a speed visible to the naked eye. Even the massive amounts of mana they had poured into Safina were instantly replenished. They stared at their hands in astonishment. Morgan clenched his fist, exclaiming in awe, "Incredible power. Is it the time god's unique ability restoring our bodies to their peak state?" Odin murmured, "If that's the case, we'll be able to do more to help the prince. No time to waste, we're heading out to support him." With that, Morgan took the lead, striding quickly toward the palace exit, the other dragon kings following close behind. Rosvisser walked over to Aurora and gently took her small hand. The mother and daughter looked back at Safina seated on the throne. Her expression was calm, but a gentle smile rested on her lips. Aurora couldn't understand why she was smiling. But Rosvisser, with all her years of life experience, could tell that smile meant relief and release. It was as if Safina had finally untied some knot in her heart. To her, it was just as vital as self-redemption. Was it that girl named Anita? Rosvisser wondered. She didn't ask. She simply whispered to the young god on the throne. "Thank you." Then she turned and left the Time Palace, hand in hand with her daughter. Leon and Kaiser stood shoulder to shoulder, both gasping for breath. They stared wordlessly at Otto's ruined body, and then at how he began to recover once again. To be honest, this combination of immortality and infinite power was far more terrifying than they had imagined. "Hey, Leon," Kaiser asked hoarsely, "can you still activate that state from before?" Leon shook his head. "The core needs to recharge. I don't know how long it'll take, but definitely not soon." Kaiser clicked his tongue. "Any other trump cards you've been hiding?" Leon shook his head again. "No, you. None." The two battle-worn warriors had reached their limit. If Otto's came at them again, they had nothing left to stop him. "Looks like you two are really at your limit now." Dragging his cursed sword, Otto's walked slowly toward them. "I was going to completely crush your spirits before I killed you, but since you Samel rats always come up with some ridiculous surprises, I've decided to skip the pleasantries. I'll kill you both, especially you, traitor Kaiser." He raised his sword and slashed. A wave of sword energy swept up sand and debris, hurtling toward Leon and Kaiser at the speed of light. They tried to muster some kind of resistance, but their exhausted bodies could no longer summon magic. Leon gritted his teeth, lowering his gaze, eyes locked onto the oncoming blade. This time, it really seemed like the end. Then, from the corner of his eye, he caught a flicker of gold rippling beneath his feet. Before he could even process what it was, his battered body healed completely in an instant. Even the magical reserves within the 3 dragon kings stored inside him had been refilled. Stunned, he glanced at Kaiser, but Kaiser hadn't changed at all. No time to think. Leon instantly activated Sumeru Shadow. Boom! The sword wave was completely nullified. "What the hell?" he muttered. "Brother!" A familiar voice called from behind. Leon turned to see the Dragon Kings arriving one after another, standing by his side. From that, he could guess what had happened. "You guys did it." Rosvisser nodded. "Yes, we succeeded. It's thanks to Safina. She used the Time God's power to restore us to peak condition." Hearing the plan had succeeded, Kaiser's gaze dimmed slightly. Still, he remained his usual silent self around others. Rosvisser, after handing Aurora to Cecilia, hurried to Leon's side. Looking closely, she noticed Kaiser hadn't recovered like the others. "Why did Kaiser get healed?" she asked. Leon thought for a moment. "Probably because the Time God's power only affects people of Samel, like how the web of time can only see the fates of Samel's people. Kaiser's from the Void Realm, so it didn't work on him." "I see." Everyone turned toward the expanding golden ripple. It swept across mountains and rivers, restoring shattered peaks, refilling dried riverbeds with water. Even the Silver Dragon Sanctuary, split in two, was being restored in a way that defied all understanding. And then, the cruelest battlefield of all. When the ripple passed over the bodies of the fallen Silver Dragon warriors, they rose again, reborn from the smoke and ash and blood. Even Leon could barely believe what he saw. This is the might of the Time God. Reversing death, transcending laws, bringing hope to all living beings amid despair. And now that the position of the Time God had been filled, the world of Samel once again had the power to suppress the gate of the void. Wherever the golden ripple passed, all void rifts closed instantly. Only one remained, Otto's temporary cross-shaped rift. Otto's is immortal, Leon said quietly, so we have to force him back to the void realm. We'll use that last rift. Understood. The Dragon Kings transformed into their true forms, hovering behind Leon and Rosvisser. Otto's clenched his sword unconsciously, watching them. Safina, you bastard, to go this far for these Samel primitives, I'll kill you. He roared, unleashing a surge of terrifying void energy. He charged with his blade, launching multiple waves of sword energy. But from the ground below, thick walls of sand erupted upward to block them. The attack smashed through the walls, but their force had been greatly reduced. Then, 3 blazing trails of flame shot toward him, each streak leaving a fiery tail behind, dissipating the sword waves entirely. Constantine flapped his wings, shedding a ring of protective flame. In a blink, he appeared directly before Otto's. Gripping his warhammer in both hands, he slammed it down with the weight of molten fury. Ultra-S-level fire magic, Crimson Dragon's Wrath. Just you, Otto sneered. He blocked the blow easily. But before he could counterattack, a blue magic circle lit up beneath his feet. Dozens of watery tendrils surged out from the array, coiling around his arms and wrists. Ultra-S-level water magic, Cage of the Raging Sea. You damn filthy, lower creatures. Otto's roared, breaking the binds. Void power exploded from his body, blasting Constantine away. But the Dragon Kings weren't finished. As he broke free of Constantine and Claudia's assault, 2 massive orbs of greenish-blue light streaked toward him. Their surfaces crackled with annihilating arcs, pure lightning. Ultra-S-level lightning magic, Doomstrike Cataclysm. Otto's raised his blade to block. But just as one orb was about to hit him, it vanished into thin air. Otto's blinked, then sneered. What kind of garbage spell is that? If it can't even hit the enemy, don't embarrass yourself. He slashed and destroyed the remaining orb. But before he could even finish mocking, the vanished orb reappeared behind him. He turned, too late to defend. Boom! Lightning exploded, smoke and ash filled the air. Otto staggered back, barely keeping his footing. He clenched his teeth, pain searing through his back. How did they do that? Odin and the Tower Master stood side by side. The latter muttered. Seems our coordination's still as good as it was back then, Odin. Don't let your guard down, old man, Odin warned. Doomstrike Cataclysm won't kill him. Otto's body began to regenerate again. At that moment, a blast of dragon flame and a crescent-shaped bolt of lightning descended from the sky, slamming him front and back simultaneously. I've had enough of this. I'm done with you bastards. Otto's tried once more to break through. He had only one way to end this, kill Safina. The time God's power couldn't affect a void being like him. If he killed her, this would all be over. He gathered energy. The eye on the cursed sword's hilt trembled violently. But just as he was about to strike, a beam of pure white light lit up above him. He froze, looked up. A small black figure hovered above, arms raised, gathering the purest primordial magic. You little brat. The golden ripple had restored Noah as well. Primordial magic, divine radiance. The sealing spell locked Otto's movements briefly. And before he could go berserk, Mevis, who had just cast Thunder Moon Slash, darted in and carried Noah to safety. Big Sis is here now, be careful, little one. The Dragon Kings continued their assault, all to create a single, precious opening. The seal from divine radiance would only last a few seconds. But it was enough. Leon and Rosvisser stood side by side. Leon reached out with his left hand. Together, they gripped the holy spear, Gungnir. Lightning arced along the golden shaft. Wind and flame swept around them like dancing spirits. A silver thread of fate stretched from the spear's tip, straight to Otto's heart. Once thrown, Gungnir never missed. Let's end this, Rosvisser. Yes. They leaned forward, gathered their strength, and hurled the spear together. Gungnir tore through the air, its blazing arc trailing white heat. It shot toward Otto's, carrying not just the hopes of Leon and Rosvisser, but of all Samil. Holy Spear Dragon Rider variant, Silver Thunder Blaze. Otto's broke free of the seal. Facing the incoming spear, he raised his cursed sword. Blade met spear tip. The impact unleashed a storm of energy. Gungnir's light scorched his body, while void power desperately healed the damage. The silver thread of fate was a taxing skill. Rosvisser had used it only once before and collapsed from the strain. But now, not only did she have Leon fighting beside her, but Safina's time magic was keeping them both at peak form. Together, they had the strength to face Otto's. "We'll lend you our power too." The Dragon Kings poured their magic into the spear. This blow, Silver Thunderblaze, represented all of Samuel's top forces. There was no retreat. Only by sending Otto's back to the void could they win. "You insects, you lowly creatures think you can stand against me." Void energy exploded from Otto's body. The cursed blade clashed again with Gungnir and began pushing it back. "This is our home, our land. We won't hand it over to a madman like you." Rosvisser summoned a surge of 7-colored light, channeling it into the spear. "If we fail now, then everything Safina endured will be for nothing. We won't let that happen." The soul verdict began taking effect. Otto's vicious aura started to weaken. Even his overwhelming power dimmed. Leon unleashed his own thunder magic, eyes blazing. "Otto's, get the hell back to your world." Lightning split the dark clouds ahead. Gungnir surged forward again, grinding against the cursed sword, pushing it back step by step. Energy raged. Otto's dug in his heels, carving deep trenches into the earth. Then he realized something. A flicker of doubt crossed his predator eyes. He gritted his teeth, then muttered coldly, "In that case..." Crack! A crisp shattering sound rang out from the center of the clash. The unbeatable cursed sword began to crack. Fractures spread from the tip, down the blade, through the hilt, and N-8, original source then. Boom! The sword exploded into shards. Gungnir, now unstoppable, plunged straight toward Otto's heart. "807. Vol 6, Chapter 170, We shall meet again in the distant future." The sacred spear pierced the heart of the void demon and dragged him all the way to the border of the Silver Dragon territory. Every void creature and Dissensionist faction soldier who witnessed this scene abandoned the fight and surged toward the last cross-shaped rift. The tide of battle collapsed completely, but in truth, the moment Safina ascended to godhood, the outcome had already been decided. Otto's, long hesitant to descend upon the main realm due to fear of the power of the primordial gods, only dared to recklessly descend upon the mainland after the deep night had passed and Noah had returned. But despite all his meticulous calculations, he failed to predict that the one to receive the god of time's power would be his former subordinate. All of his madness and all of his plans would now be swept away, together with everything else, back into the world of the void. The sacred spear, Gungnir, carried Otto's across the battlefield, knocking aside every monster and soldier in its path. Finally, it pinned Otto's dead center in the heart of the cross-shaped void fissure. He used all his strength to stretch out his demonic body, clutching desperately at the boundary between the void and Samuel. Half his form had already returned to his own world. Yet he still refused to give up. Otto's struggling eyes swept across the battlefield. The void monsters and warriors, afraid of being killed, all rushed toward the final rift. Pathetic trash. Swarm bugs crawled over his body, their survival instincts driving their mindless forms to squeeze into any place that seemed remotely safe. The larger void creatures blocked the entrance to the cross-shaped fissure. They howled, and the soldiers cried out, begging Otto's to take them with him. The scene was chaotic, almost comical. Otto's gaze passed over the mass of cowardly creatures and landed directly on the approaching Leon and Kaiser. In that instant, the Lord of the Void couldn't help but reveal a look of resignation. "Leon Kazmod, this time you win." Leon met Otto's gaze in silence, his eyes steady, his voice resolute. "Just this once, Otto's, you and your pitiful worms can rot in the void together." With that, Leon raised his hand and gathered his magic. The next instant, a powerful thunder spell blasted into the wave of monsters. The force tore through the swarm blocking Outlas's body and sent him crashing completely back into the void. Leon, this isn't over. That final, unwilling roar slowly faded into the last rift in the void. Far away, just beyond the horizon, a newborn sun was rising. Its light pushed back the night and shone once more upon the land. The dawn cast long shadows from every body, stretching far, far ahead. Leon stood at the high edge of the Silver Dragon border, holding Aurora in his arms, gazing at Rosvisser's hand, feeling the warmth and brilliance that followed the bitter night. We won, Prince, we actually won. Covered in wounds, Annie lifted her head toward them, her eyes full of tears. Then she turned to her fellow clansmen, raising her arm high and shouting. We won, we drove back the void. Victory to our land. Long live the letter 1D40 D letter 1D428 letter 1D42F letter 1D41E letter 1D425 letter 1D422 letter 1D42D, Prince. Waves of cheers swept across the entire battlefield. As the rising sun neared the horizon, Rosvisser glanced at Leon, her eyes asking him a silent question. Leon gave her a small, affirmative nod. Rosvisser understood and stepped forward. Facing her people, she slowly began to speak. After a night of brutal battle, we have finally driven out the invaders from another world. This would not have been possible without everyone's joint efforts and the resolve each of you showed in sacrificing yourselves to protect your home. We also owe our thanks to the Red Dragon King, the Flame Dragon King, the Thunder Dragon King, and all the allied clans who came to our aid. The Silver Dragon warriors all raised their heads, holding their breath, listening intently to their queen. But the greatest credit for our victory belongs to this young man named Kaiser and his sister. Rosvisser turned slightly and gestured for Kaiser to step forward. But Kaiser had always been a low-key, reserved person. This kind of public recognition didn't suit him. He looked awkward and uncomfortable. Until old Constantine gave him a shove from behind, forcing him a step forward, ending up standing in front of Leon. The Silver Dragons and the Homeland faction soldiers all turned their eyes toward him. Kaiser really didn't let us down. I knew it. I knew you'd one day rise up and lead us against Otto's. That's right, that's right. We can't return to the void now, so wherever we go from here, we'll follow you, Kaiser. As one of the homeward faction soldiers said, they truly couldn't return to the void anymore. Otto's and the Dissensionists faction had been driven back. If they went back too, it would be suicide. They weren't too dumb to see that. Even as the void rifts closed one by one, they still felt some reluctance to leave their old home behind. But if they lost their lives, what hope would they have of reclaiming their homeland one day? You had to rebel when rebellion was needed. That showed they still had blood running hot in their veins. And you had to stay calm when needed too. That proved they weren't just brainless idealists. Now, all the Homeland faction soldiers were chanting Kaiser's name. It left him at a complete loss. Kaiser instinctively turned to the side, because every time something like this happened, every time he had to show his face. His sister had always been the one to take his place. But this time, there was no one beside him. He froze slightly, a flicker of sorrow crossing his amber-colored eyes. But at the same time, it only strengthened the rebellious choice in his heart. Adjusting his lips slightly, Kaiser pressed them together and slowly said, "Thank you for trusting me, for being willing to follow me, but honestly, I'm really not cut out to be a leader. You're all very understanding, you think I'm good at this. But leading you all, I'm sorry, I really can't do it. After this battle, I have my own path to take. I'm afraid I can't go with you. I'm really, truly sorry." No one had expected Kaiser to suddenly start apologizing in his speech. Not even Leon could guess what the hell this kid was thinking. Then, what should we do, Kaiser? Yeah, Kaiser, this continent is so foreign to us. If you won't lead us, where do we go? Faced with their appeals, Kaiser didn't respond right away. He simply turned and looked silently at Leon. Leon was momentarily stunned, but quickly understood what Kaiser meant. He gave Kaiser a nod. Kaiser replied softly, "Thank you." Then he turned back to the soldiers of the Homeland faction. "Don't worry. After I leave, you can follow the guidance of Prince Leon Kazmod. He's a prince of the Silver Dragons, completely trustworthy, and he's willing to help us." Leon didn't see this as a burden, nor did he feel like Kaiser was just dumping a problem on him. First of all, Kaiser really wasn't suited to be a leader, just as he said. He was more fit to be a warrior. Second, both he and his sister had given so much, for Samuel, and for Leon's entire family. So any request from Kaiser wouldn't be too much. That's why Leon agreed without hesitation. I'm still a little worried. I don't think you need to be. If Kaiser trusts him, then there's no problem. Hey, now that you put it like that, yeah, I guess that makes sense. In the Homeland faction, Kaiser's reputation was the same as General Leon's among the humans and dragons. Sometimes they didn't need to do anything, didn't need to prove anything. Their prestige alone was enough to convince others. After arrangements for the Homeland faction were made, someone else asked, "By the way, Kaiser, what about your sister?" At that, Kaiser flinched slightly. He was distracted for just a second, until old Constantine deliberately coughed behind him and brought him back to the moment. "Ah, my sister." Kaiser lowered his eyes and said softly, "She's still here, just not in this place. It'll be a long, long time before she comes back, so I'm going to be with her. She's always been terrified of being alone." Behind the Silver Dragon territory, before the Temple of Time. "You're really sure about this, Kaiser?" Leon asked. Kaiser nodded firmly. "I've made up my mind, even if my sister wouldn't want me to do this." He paused, then shook his head and smiled. "But I've listened to her my whole life. I think it's time I disobeyed just this once." Leon didn't know what to say. He looked back at Rosvisser, Aurora, and at the Red Dragon King. Then he turned back to Kaiser. "Thank you for everything you and Safina did. I'll make sure the Homeland faction is taken care of." "I believe you, Leon." Kaiser paused, then brought out Night Continent, extending both hands. Leon was surprised. "What are you doing?" "Think of it as a keepsake." Kaiser shoved the blade into Leon's hands and said with a half-smile, "Hopefully, when my sister and I come back, you won't be too old to wield a sword." Leon blinked. "What's that supposed to mean?" "You and I still owe each other a duel, don't we?" With that, Kaiser turned around and walked slowly toward the temple's door. Leon and the others watched his back, watched his steady footsteps as he passed the giant hourglass. Until finally, he stood before the throne. He looked at the girl seated there. She stared straight ahead, her face expressionless. But tears streamed down her cheeks, falling slowly. Kaiser reached out and gently wiped them away. The great doors of the temple began to close. As all watched, Kaiser turned, standing beside Safina, and met their gaze one last time. Boom! The door slammed shut. All fell silent. The massive golden structure slowly vanished from view. Aurora stood beside Rosvisser, staring at the spot where the temple had disappeared. "Mom, will we ever see Teacher Safina and Kaiser again?" Rosvisser took Aurora's hand and gently replied, "We will, Aurora, just like Safina said. We shall meet again, in the distant future." "808. Vol 6, Chapter 171, End of Arc Summary and Q&A Authoress Notes. This is my first time attempting a summary after finishing a story arc, and I'd also like to take the chance to answer a few questions readers have been asking. There are two reasons I decided to write this summary. First, because the Shattered Crown arc was really long enough to be its own standalone fantasy novella. Second, because compared to other arcs, this one ended on a rather heavy note. To be honest, when I first designed the characters of the Safina siblings, I had already planned out their ending. But I didn't anticipate how popular they'd become, so much so that many readers are now reluctant to say goodbye to the Safina. Some are even afraid to keep reading because they're worried more emotionally heavy plotlines are coming. That's absolutely the author's fault, and I sincerely apologize. It really wasn't appropriate to drop such a heavy main plot into what's supposed to be a light-hearted family comedy. But I promise, moving forward there will be no more storylines like this. Starting next arc, we're going back to daily fluff with a dash of plot. I guarantee you'll be satisfied. Here are some of the more common questions I've been seeing recently. Q, are the Safina siblings never coming back? A. They will come back. Q. Is the story ending soon? Are you just padding it with filler now? A. It's not ending. It's not ending. It's not ending. I've answered this question countless times in comment sections and group chats. Readers who ask might not think much of it, but those questions can unintentionally start a false sense of the story's ending, which makes newer readers think it's all wrapping up. As for whether the story is filler, well, that's subjective. Some readers love the slice-of-life stuff, so they see main plot or battle scenes as filler. Others just want non-stop action, and slice-of-life feels like filler to them. I can't satisfy both sides at once, so all I can do is try to balance daily fluff and major plotlines the best I can. I hope everyone understands. Q. Isn't Muse kind of a background extra? Isn't she underdeveloped? A. Yeah, I didn't really figure out her growth arc when designing her. Her personality ended up overlapping a bit with Moon. S. I'll try to give her more focus in the next arc and flesh out her storyline. Hope you'll like her more. Q. Isn't the queen kind of weak? Any plans to power her tilde? N. Avi ye L letter 1D55A, GHT tilde up. A. The queen's not weak. It's just that her husband is too strong, which makes her look weaker by comparison. To put it plainly, the stats and mechanics of Holy Spear Rose are slightly above Odin's. New unit of measurement, Old Odin. Still, I'll give her some buffs in future arcs. But remember this, brother. No matter how strong you are, I will always be above you. That's about it for now. Ghana,